All right, everybody, here we are live back again. And as always, with me, we are streaming this on our Faith Unveiled channel. And with me, as always, is Mahadan. Mahadan, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. And so we are missing Kali today. But today we decided to do something different. We picked a few articles from Daniel Haqiqatjou where his stance on marital rape was pretty radical to say the least, basically. And we wanted to just go through it and see what he has to say, what the Islamic scriptures say, and what really makes sense in light of rational thought process, basically. And we're going to be discussing that. It's going to be probably a short stream, but let's see if we have enough time. Probably later on we might run other video and see if you can critique that, basically. But before we do that, what you got to do is, since this if you're a new person to the stream and have only joined this channel, maybe you would like to go to our original channel and look through our streams or video clips. And if you want, you can subscribe to that channel as well. But remember that channel is going to be in Hindi, Urdu only later on as we progress, and this channel is going to become English only channel later on once we start gaining traction on this channel. So what we are hoping to do is to gain Western audience, or not just Western audience, but any English speaking audience that's pretty well versed, and not well versed in philosophy and rational thought process, but at least understand these concepts and wants to deep dive into these concepts from an Islamic perspective. To be, yeah, or you can say, even Christianity's perspective. So that's the thought as of now. But later on, we're going to wean off that channel from English content and just do streams of any English streams on this channel alone. So yeah, that's about it. We're gonna jump straight into the stream, unless Madan has anything to say.
No. Let's just jump in.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a video. This is a debate. I'm not quite sure when it took place. Probably 2 years back, maybe something like that. Probably 2-3 years back or so, between Haris Sultan, an atheist, I believe. He's originally from Pakistan but lives in Australia, and Daniel Haqiqatjou. So I think the topic of sex slavery and probably marital rape came into that debate pretty prominent.
Is this
Here what
mainly? Yeah, is this mainly to do with sex slavery?
this?
Or is
Yeah,
it
sex slavery, right? Sex slavery, right? But
right?
probably
Okay.
they touched upon that. They touched upon this topic of marriage and you know.
Yeah, I think that
All right,
the other video
let's
contained. Yeah, I think I sent you
let's
another video. That would cover the marital rape aspect. But you can cover this one as well. But
All right. So I'm mistaken. I'm mistaken. So this is only on sex slavery. So the
I think
marital
so.
rape part
I think this is,
won't be covered in here. So yeah,
yeah.
you're right. But let's listen to it. We're gonna go through the article to highlight his take on marital rape and
Yeah. Go for it.
concept of marital rape, basically. So let's listen to it. Basically.
Let me get to the point about sex slavery. A good Now, let me get to the point about sex slavery. A good book I recommend is Lawrence Keeley's War Before Civilization. He explains that pre-modern war was primarily about manpower. The side that had the largest army was usually going to win. And if you had too few people, this made you an easy target for a larger group to attack you and wipe you out. This meant that women were very valuable in pre-modern societies because your society's ability to reproduce and build up the population is limited by the number of fertile wombs you have. Keeley says, and I quote, "Although the loss of even a large percentage of males will have no direct influence on a group's demographic fortunes, the loss of or gain of fertile women can mean the difference between population decline and growth." This is why Keeley argues all pre-modern civilizations took sex slaves. Again, this was a necessary aspect of war. If you did not take concubines, you were at a major disadvantage militarily, because you either take concubines or your people get wiped off the face of the earth. There is no third option. So given that stark reality, yes, taking sex slaves was not only morally justified, it was morally necessary. And really, that's enough for the argument, but it's worth noting that the Sharia's rules on concubines and slaves in general are the most humane out of any other civilization. Again, slavery is not supposed to be a fun time, but Islam explicitly gives slaves many rights. They can't be mutilated, they can't be killed, they can't be prostituted. For women, if she gives birth to her master's baby, the baby is free, and she also is freed automatically when her master dies. These rules ensured that captured slaves very quickly integrated within larger Islamic society, especially after 1 or 2 generations. Contrast this with other societies in history that maintain a permanent subjugated slave class based on race or ethnicity. Islamic slavery is not like that, and that's why we see, for example, the Mamluks in the Middle Ages, who were a ruling class of Muslim slaves and the descendants of slaves, some of whom even reached the level of sultans and emirs in the Muslim caliphate as slaves. So the argument is very simple, Harris, but you haven't responded to anything that I've said. All you're doing is gish galloping, bringing in everything except the kitchen sink, misrepresenting straw man. And I think the audience sees that. I have a very simple argument. Sharia preserves marriage and family and community and the human race overall. And I'm bringing statistics, objective statistics, that if you think that family and marriage is not valuable, then say that. Say that you don't think it's valuable, so we know. But otherwise, I'm bringing objective arguments, and you haven't responded to any of my questions.
All right. So right off the bat, I think we have it. But I think it's a mistake on my part that I ran probably not the most relevant video over here. But Mahadin, shall we switch on to the other one? Because I think we had a few videos and I chose the incorrect one, basically. So let me go through the other one, basically, right? I didn't realize this. Yeah, I didn't realize this.
Yeah.
All right. So I think, can you see it?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
All right. So this is the one I wanted, basically, and
Yep. That's right.
all right. So don't go over the title of this. I think that's probably not how probably it was mentioned. This is a video made by somebody else, so they had the right to title it the way they want, and we would refrain from saying that this is exactly what Daniel's words were, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without further ado.
Says, Daniel, if a husband forces sex upon his wife against her will, is that wrong under Sharia?
So Islam comes with certain marital rights. Husbands have certain rights and duties. For example, the husband has to provide shelter, he has to provide clothing, he has to provide food. It doesn't matter if the husband doesn't want to provide those things, he has to. And the state, the qadi, basically the Islamic state, can force the husband against his will to provide nafaqah for his wife and for his children and his family. This is something that's good. This is an important policy that reduces the man's individual liberty. And similarly, the woman's individual liberty is also restricted, that if the husband has a reasonable request for sexual relations, reasonable, then she is obligated to comply with that. If she decides not to, he can't start beating her and he can't start abusing her in a violent way. But the qadi can say that, look, you're not meeting your spousal duties, and therefore you will forfeit your mahr, for example, the bride dowry. You'll forfeit your other privileges as a wife. So there's give and take in marriage. That's why Islam is beautiful, because it creates this dependency between husband and wife. It's not like modern sexless marriages in the West, where women say, oh, I can leave my husband to have no sex for months because I don't feel like it. I'm a strong, independent woman. And meanwhile, the husband is working his tail off trying to provide for his family, but there's no obligation on his wife to reciprocate in any kind, because she's a strong, independent feminist and she has to have maximum choice and opportunity. But the poor devil, he has to work and provide for all of that with no compensation or anything in return.
All right. So
Okay.
right off the bat, you can see that Daniel's take is that since a man in the house provides for the family, right? And he has to because he has no other option. Basically, he's forced to provide for the family. That's why it's analogous that the same should be applied to the female of the or the wife of that husband, that she submits to whenever that husband has a, and he quote unquote he says reasonable request, right? And he doesn't actually say what that reasonable means, basically, right? So
Yeah.
this is not an analogous situation, by the way. I mean, there is no, and I'll tell you why exactly. And we're gonna slowly go into the some of the hadith, as well as there are a couple of verses in the Quran as well, where you'll see that the matter of marital rape is probably not discussed as thoroughly, right? I mean, there is a concept of zina bil jabr, by the way. And there is I think there's another term called zina bil ikra, which is used, but this is for zina, basically, right? This fornication by force, this is for zina, basically, right? And yeah, but that's another topic for the timing. But the point I was making before this, before going into the Islamic terminology, basically, is that uh, those two situations are not analogous. So you can't say that the woman, is there a punishment for a man not working, not providing for family? Maybe he's incapable of doing that, or maybe he doesn't want to do that, basically. Is there something? Is there something that uh, there's no curse from the God, basically, right? There's no curse from God or Allah, basically. But if a female refuses, basically, right, there is a hadith, right, that says the angels will curse the woman if she refuses to have to give in to the request of her husband, basically, right? So this is not an analogous situation, is my point, basically, here, right, Madin?
Yeah. So what I think we should do is, before I comment on anything, let's look at any more final videos on this. Yeah, I'll remember what's been said here. Let's just kind of gather his view entirely, package his view together, right? Because what he says here is a little bit different from what he says in an article that we're going to look into, right?
Shall we then jump on to the article?
Is there another video? Did I send you another video?
You did send me another video, but I thought that was the same video. Probably it has the same clip, pretty much, right? I think.
I think was it the unapologetic answer for marital rape, or
I
is
think.
that to do with the sex slavery?
I think there are. So one you say is sent with sex slavery, and yeah. So we already ran that, but since I hadn't run that earlier, and I realized that was the wrong one, basically. And there's another one that you sent me. That's between Ali Dawa and Muhammad Hijab. So they do also talk about the same same issue, right?
They talk about the same issue, yes. So let's just look at the article then. Let's look at the article and then we'll get to.
Yeah, I think let's go to the article and listen to the article. Can you see it, right? Is it clear enough?
If you just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, just get the paragraph into the screen.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have
think
a
that's
hard time.
the-
Let me try to see if it can
Yeah.
wrap to the. I can't see that. I think this is good enough, right? What we'll have to do is maybe I'll go full screen over here. Can you see it?
Mhm.
And maybe I'll just make it big enough so that it just covers. Can you see
Yeah.
it now? Is it good enough?
Yep.
All right. Let's go through this article, right? So this is an article by Daniel Haqiqatjou. Madan, I'm getting a feedback from your side. All right. So this is an article from Daniel Haqiqatjou accusing Islam of endorsing marital rape. It is dated June 11th, 2023. All right. Just about 1 year, right? So he writes, considers the simple point. If forcing a man to provide financially for his children is not slavery, then forcing a woman to have sex with her husband is not rape, basically. I think this whole sentence summarizes his stance on this topic pretty much, right? It's morally correct to force both men and women to do their marital duties regardless of consent. So his point being that once a marriage contract is made, wife has no choice basically in terms of having sex with. And I'm of course I'm going into a little bit of an hyperbole over here, basically, but more often than not, she has to give in to his demands, basically. And he writes, only liberals are too dumb to grasp this point. The origins of marital rape. The concept of marital rape is absent in pre-modern culture and religious traditions, including Islam. Rather, the concept began to be developed in the 19th century by Western feminists like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucy Stone. For instance, Stanton writes, I think I'm gonna skip this. Anybody who wants to read this, probably can go ahead and read that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just read through Daniel Haqiqatjou's points, what he is trying to mention over here. The concept of marital rape was only incorporated into legal systems across the globe beginning in the 1970s. The aim of this concept is to undermine the husband's patriarchal authority within marriage. It is to give wives the power to control husbands. How? Well, if the husband does not obey the wife, she can discipline him by denying him sex and by extension children. Meanwhile, it is assumed that the wife is still entitled to financial maintenance. This amounts to her ability to force the husband to work and take his money while providing no reciprocal value in exchange.
Let me just say something. I think instead of reading the entire thing, let's go through it line by line. I think that would be better because that way we can engage with it. You understand?
Yeah, sure. So you wanna go ahead and can you read it, or you want me to read it and then you want to get in? And
Yeah, you read it and then we'll both comment on it. So you just read
all
that
right.
first part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one, the concept of marital rape was only incorporated into legal system. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
All right. The concept of marital rape was only incorporated into legal systems across the globe beginning in the 1970s. Right. The aim of this concept is to undermine the husband's patriarchal authority within marriage. All right. What do you have to? Do you want to?
In terms of the first part, the concept of marital rape was only incorporated into legal systems. Again, that's what does he mean by that exactly? We don't know. I mean, the concept of marital rape has existed a lot longer than before that, and some legal systems had incorporated it into the codex, perhaps certain Egyptian systems, etc. Whilst giving the right to divorce and so on and so forth. So this is not entirely accurate, I would imagine, and and I'm sure many historians can challenge that particular point, that the concept of marital rape. So what he's saying is that marital rape, we don't know exactly what rape means here. Does it mean coercion, violence, attack, forceful sex, or is it even something extending to unconscious sex or sex without explicit consent, which are not the same thing, So forceful sex, which is violent, imposed sex, is very different from sex where the woman or the man has not openly wanted to have sex, but the other person takes advantage of the situation and touches whatever. So rape itself is kind of open-ended as to what it means, but the concept of marital rape incorporated in the modern way with modern legal language in modern legal systems perhaps was, especially in the West, a late adventure. But I don't think it was the first ever novel sort of idea that came about in the last 50 years, marital rape. I mean, we could probably have to do a quick research on this to really substantiate that. But I
Yeah,
don't think that.
I think Daniel is wrong on many counts, as you have already mentioned, but also on one count that uh, the debates around this have been going on for a long time, since 17th century probably, right? And there have been debates whether it should be considered as a, marital rape or not, basically, because you're violating, and it has to be probably even older than that, what I assume. Whilst I can't give you proper references as of now, but what we can do is we can find out those references and maybe add once the stream is over. Probably that'll be a justice to this whole topic, pretty much, right? But yeah, I mean, it's not that in 1970s a bunch of feminists came in, the Stanton that he's naming, and then they gave a verdict on, then this is a marital rape. Right now, I think the concept has been existing for a long
I mean,
time, pretty much.
the concept of non-violence or pacifist religions and ethos had existed, predated humanity, modern day recorded civilizations, right? So the fact of marital rape being a subset of the pacifist attitude, is the logical consequence of a pacifist attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was gonna go there, but I wasn't really sure whether this is gonna really align with this thought process. But you're right. I mean, I would have thought exactly the same way, pretty much, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can
The reason I'm saying so is because he's trying to, in a typical sort of Haqiqatjou way, he's trying to say that this is something that was only thought up by legal minds in the last 40, 50 years, 60 years, and this is an aberration from the historical norm. And therefore, the prevailing wisdom is the one that's been ongoing for this long, and that was the natural belief, right? And today's liberalism, today's secularisms, today's secular democracies are the aberration, they're the oddities, they're the eccentricities, right? And he wants to make the point, maybe through moral intuition, that this is a departure from our ordinary moral intuitions, right? And that's what he's trying to say, that this is just an innovation of modern day era, and all civilization. And there's another way of saying that since every other civilization, every other culture engage in some sort of allowance to the husband in a patriarchal marriage institution where it didn't recognize rape in the marriage institution, then why is Islam so exceptional here, right? I think that's the point that he's trying to say, and to defeat that, first of all, we just need to say that there were cultures around that didn't do that, but that would lower the credence towards the universality of it. But the real defeat to that is that the fact that past in the history of humanity, past cultures did things. I mean, I really don't know how he gets this to be sounding convincing to himself. But the fact that human beings participated in all sorts of crazy stuff. First of all, in the past, we thought the earth was flat. In the past, we thought epilepsy was done by demons. In the past, we thought the earth was not spinning on its axis. In the past, we thought the earth, the sun went around the earth, and geocentrism and so on and so forth. There's plenty of things in the past that we were wrong about. And so why does he think ethical beliefs are not subject to that? Right?
Yeah, Madhu, sorry. If you want to add something to it, then otherwise I was going to say something, add to it.
Oh yeah. So why would ethical beliefs not be subject to that? So I don't understand why he doesn't think ethical beliefs don't count for that. Plus, he appeals to moral intuitions in this area, but that's not how moral intuitions work. We don't just say it's accepted everywhere and every place, time, and beyond this particular continent to other continents or something like that. That's not really how it kind of works, right? Ethical intuitions are not the same thing as. First of all, you've got to distinguish ethical intuitions from those that were products of the conventions of the time, mistakes, errors, and so on and so forth. And how do you do that? Ethical intuition isn't just any old belief that you hold at any one place in one country or more than one country or beyond time and culture. That's not an ethical intuition necessarily. So ethical intuitions nowadays, when moral philosophers talk about ethical intuitions, they're more to do with concepts that emanate from the concept of ethics. By thinking about what ethics is, fairness, justice, love, compassion, those are ethical intuitions. That's what people would talk about ethical intuitions, right? But not everything is an ethical intuition. That there was a time where tribes used to take over other tribes. There was discrimination and racism and so on and so forth. Ethical philosophers don't think those are ethical intuitions. So how do we decide that? And there are methods that have been developed to decide those things, and it's simply not the way he's talking about it, which is just find out what was prevalent or universal across humanity throughout time. That is not the criterion to discover what our ethical intuitions are, right? And the second thing is, well, these ethical intuitions are intuitions because they make sense within an ethical concept, ethical framework, right? Fairness makes sense within a framework of ethics. Compassion makes sense in a framework of ethics. Justice, etc., etc. But, for example, hatred is not an ethical intuition. Lust is not necessarily an ethical intuition. Greed is not necessarily an ethical intuition. Aristotle uncovered this a long time
Right.
ago.
And one more thing, Madan, I think I'm just I'm getting a feedback from your side. So the point bolstering your point, these are the very same guys when talking about intuitions, ethical intuitions. They'll list all these moral intuitions that they think that they are objective because we have all those intuitions, basically fairness, justice, caring, empathy, all these things, basically, right? Even though they'll highlight some of these studies done on children where they exhibit the traits of being just and fair and showing empathy and all those things, right? So yeah, and one more point I wanted to highlight over here, right? Let's say given that this marital rape was not considered in earlier civilizations, right? Let's say even before 19th century it wasn't recognized as such. Remember why that was? I think there was a very primary reason for that. Women were considered as property, just like table, a chair, basically, whatever you may have, your axe or your sheep or goat or whatever, right? And they were considered as properties, basically, and properties had no rights pretty much, except maybe once you married a woman, she has a slight bit more rights than probably your livestock had, but then they were still your property, right? And that's why they didn't have these so once you try to Daniel tries to do that equivalence between man is forced to support his family, and that equivalence that he tries to portray over here, I don't think that works because of these reasons, because the man was never considered to be a property of women, basically. Some women have been subjugated forever since time immemorial, right? So that's one of the reasons why this thing was never there pretty much in all civilizations. And most of the civilizations probably in the world in past history or past human history have been pretty much patriarchal. There have been very, very few matriarchal societies, if there have been any, pretty much, right? So that's one of the reasons I think primary that you don't get to see that. And even if granted that those civilizations didn't exist, where that everyone considered, no one considered marital rape to be a rape. That's the reason why.
Yeah, but in respect to that point, all he would have to do is point out why patriarchy is wrong, right? So again, the first couple of sentences there, the purpose of him explaining why the patriarchal norm was prevalent, the common denominator, the common modus operandi, and everything else was a departure, modern day innovation. The purpose of that is to suggest that that is what every single civilization used to do. And his point, the entire thrust of his moral argument here, is that human beings realized that that was the righteous way. And today's moral systems and the denial of attack on patriarchy is an aberration of it. And he uses that. He uses the fact of departure to suggest, and the fact of commonality, previous commonality and consensus, to suggest, hey, our intuitions are actually aligning with these things in the past and not these new things, right? That's his main point. So if you bring up the fact that the reason why women were treated in this manner or didn't have these particular rights is because of the patriarchy, he will simply say, well, why is that wrong? Right? Because his point, as far as I can see, is based on the idea that these things were entirely universal and every other culture accepted it as well. But his point lacks thrust in and of itself, because in order to attack his point,
Yeah, I think he'll have to do a lot more than just saying that the past societies were doing it. That's why it was right, and that would be my response pretty much. Because basically, show it that those societies did what.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Absolutely, because his point ultimately ends there, which is the fact that there's a contrast from the past. But why is that a point? That's like a well-known fallacious argument in other contexts. You know, everybody's been doing it in this particular way before, and therefore therefore it's the right way to do it. I mean,
Yeah, argumentum ad populum, maybe
something like that, or argument from
something
tradition, or argument from convention.
yeah, from
Yeah,
culture or tradition, you can call it whatever.
or even or even a what is it called? A genetic fallacy.
Yeah, a genetic fallacy. Yeah.
Or you may say even the naturalistic fallacy, that it's natural to us and therefore it's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll, maybe not naturalistic fallacy, right?
I think he's trying to say it does come naturally, because in other contexts, Haqiqatjou talks about moral intuitions in the sense that it's natural.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, that's why I'm throwing these all out. But the reason is because he has to give justification between the fact that some of these things are convention and therefore it's right. Some of these things. And the only justification that he has for it is that it's intuitive. It just ends there. That convention or natural or universal is suggestive of it being intuitive. And intuitive means right. Like some things you don't need proof of. Remember his argument from intuition? Some things you don't need proof of. And we tackled that extensively before. That's first of all, we could just reject the idea of intuitions being a reliable pathway to the truth, right? You can just reject that. Why should we go at this point?
I think we just for the audience sake, I'll highlight that you can find that a couple of clips of that review that we did on Matt Dillahunty versus Daniel Haqiqatjou's debate, and that's where his primary argument. Thank you. So his primary argument hinged around that argument from intuition, pretty much. So anybody who wants to check that out, go through our video library, either on Philosapiens or Unveiling Faith. You can find it over there. Right.
Yeah. I mean, we debunk the idea that there cannot be any arguments for other modes of thinking, like logic or maths. Yeah, and we debunk the idea that you have to rely upon intuition for certain forms of thinking. We debunk the idea that that intuition is a pathway to reliable. Well, he never made this point anyway, but I did anyway. That it's a reliable pathway to truth. It's not. And furthermore, so you guys can go and check that out. And one of the main arguments I made is that the very assertion that certain things can be just known through intuition, and that's it, right? In and of itself isn't the most intuitive.
Yeah, I think that argument from intuition cuts it both ways. Basically, once you agree to that, then you have these other intuitions that you'll have to hold true to, pretty much, right? And there'll be, empathy, fairness, just you have it, right? But otherwise, I mean, as you have mentioned in that clip as well, I mean, that review as well, that it is not a reliable pathway to truth. Basically, intuitions are not exactly reliable pathway to truth. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you guys can look into that video furthermore. So let's just look at the next sentence. The aim of the
all right.
concept is to align the husband's patriarchal authority within marriage. Again, that's not like the primary purpose. It's not. It might be a collateral consequence of one of the primary purposes. Perhaps is to just liberate women to some extent from harm. And you might think that's a statement that ultimately says the same thing, but not necessarily, right? So nobody's just willy-nilly just trying to remove the patriarchal power and authority from the marriage, from the man, for no reason at all, right? So it's like saying, I want to stop Adolf Hitler from gassing the Jews, because gassing the Jews is wrong. Well, so you just want to remove Hitler from power? Well, yeah, but that kind of misses the purpose. I've got a reason for that, a bit deeper reason, right? Because I want to stop Adolf Hitler from gassing the Jews, right? And if that means removing the power from Hitler or whatever, or if I stop Adolf Hitler from gassing the Jews, this will result in him losing power, and so be it. Yes, they go hand in hand, but that's not the main reason. The central reason is to stop the harm that he's causing. And it's similar to this. I mean, nobody's just trying to undermine the husband's patriarchal authority over power. That sounds like a conspiracy against the patriarchy. Rather, the reason is that in this situation, the husband's authority is being wielded in a way that causes unnecessary harm that we consider to be immoral. That's why. So yeah, you want to go to the next point?
I think in a sense it's a straw man argument from him, pretty much. I mean, yeah, I mean, you just don't want all the power from the husband to be taken just because she's denying him sex. I think that's an absurd argument from his side, I think. Shall we move on from here?
Yeah. So it is to give wives power to control husbands. How? Well, if the husband does not obey the wife, she can discipline him, denying him sex, and by extension, children. Meanwhile, it is assumed that the wife is still entitled to financial maintenance. This amounts to her ability to force her husband to work and take his money, while providing no reciprocal value in exchange. Again, he's talking in such broad sweeps, right? No, that's not necessarily what, there's very many different advocates for removing marital rape. Not all of them believe in this kind of asymmetrical power situation where the woman is empowered but the husband isn't, right? Which theorist is he quoting? Which advocate is he citing? He's just bulking everybody into one little feminist camp that is aiming at reducing the husband's ability to pretty much rape somebody, yeah, or force his will upon somebody, or coerce the wife, and equating that with this kind of unilateral empowerment for the woman, where the woman can disobey the husband whilst the husband has to obey the woman, or something like that. Some sort of female empowerment and male emasculation or male disempowerment. Nobody necessarily have to argue for that, right? There's plenty of different feminist theorists who believe, for example, again, I don't even necessarily identify, me personally, I don't necessarily identify as a particular feminist, but let's at least give regard to feminists, right? Yeah, yes, indeed, there are some feminists who might think like that, but then there's plenty of feminists who don't, like liberal or equity feminists, who believe that the husband and wife's role, or egalitarian feminism, husband and wife role should be equalized through the, entirely, and neither should have unequal power or rights or privileges.
I think what Haqiqatjou has done over here, he has taken an argument and taken to the other extreme, pretty much, right? I mean, he's just thinking that there's no middle ground, there's no balancing act between those two positions. He's just thinking as soon as that a woman is given a permission to even say no to sex, she's gonna go on the other extreme and just become an authoritative, person
Yeah,
in this contract, pretty much, right?
and you can
And
reject
that's,
that.
yeah,
You can have modern day advocates of feminism who are inconsistent, who are hypocritically will demand their rights and not rights for the husband. You don't need to accept that. That's one brand of, or one manifestation, a gross manifestation of some forms of feminism, and I'm pretty sure there are
yeah, that's
advocates.
true. That exists. I mean, nobody would deny that fact, pretty much. But I would say that those who are in that camp are far few between, pretty much, right? I won't say that's the majority, right? I mean, yeah,
Um, there might be a difference between the public manifestation of layperson feminism that occurs on social media, in which there is a lot of inconsistency and hypocrisy and contradictory behaviors. There might be a difference between that and academically well thought out, consistent philosophical positions. And even within the philosophical and communities, there might be inconsistencies, but you just gotta. The point is, even if every single feminist in the world was inconsistent, you have to charitably interpret whether or not that's the only logical consequence. No, it's not. If every single feminist was inconsistent and hypocritical, the point is we can think of a consistent way of being a feminist, which is to consistently apply the principles of egalitarianism. Let's say, if you're an egalitarian or equity feminist, in which, or a liberal feminist, in which you want to equalize the rights and by law the ability for men and women to choose
power balance between the two, right?
As to how they want to behave. Yeah, and the point is we have to charitably interpret. So if every single person, every single feminist is hypocritical to some extent, you don't get to instantaneously conclude that that is the only logical option. Well, the other logical option is to iron out the hypocrisy by just simply being consistent. Simple as that. And by doing so, you don't have to act like a Haqiqatjou and misrepresent. Not even misrepresent. He is actually misrepresenting feminists, because some feminists, but completely.
I think he's misrepresenting the broader and more philosophical or logical feminist movement. He's taking some of the extreme views from that and just injecting in over here because it solves his purpose, pretty much his agenda, in a sense, basically. Because he wants to highlight that his position is somehow more superior to those radical feminists' position, pretty much, right? And that's what he's doing. And yeah,
I mean, I'll give you an example of how, first of all, these things differ from country to country, nation to nation, state to state. In America, for example, most democratic countries have changed their laws in such ways so as to make matrimonial breakdown, financial remuneration, etc., maintenance cost and alimony to be gender neutral. And depending on who's the highest owner, highest breadwinner, highest earner, depending on who's the dependent, perhaps, depending on how many sacrifices he or she has made, right? It is determined that way. And upon divorce, for example, the assets are distributed in that manner based on those formulas, which are gender neutral. Now, of course, in actual on the ground reality, given men are the ones who are usually the primary breadwinner, but that's because women are selecting men who tend to be breadwinners, right? The distribution may go that way, especially when women have had children and was dependent upon that particular man for a while, and then you can make the argument that well, look, women are, for example, able to divorce and take the assets or maintenance, etc. But in principle, again, most of these state laws, most of these laws, if there is a breakdown in sexual relationship, a man can divorce. You know, lacking intimacy is a ground, is part of irreconcilable differences, and the different states actually have the intimacy criterion. Some states don't, some do. And the point is, he's lumping everything together that to a point where it's not, you can't even talk about these things properly. Which state, which country, which laws is he referring to? Which theorist? This is a common problem that I've seen in Haqiqatjou. He just talks about Western world as though it's just one thing, like as though there's no differences between country to country, you know, philosophy. There's no difference between the Labour Party or the Conservative Party. Yeah.
Right.
You know, there are positions. You can be an advocate of marital duties between spouses, one of them including romantic and sexual relationships, right? And you can think that, for example, if one of the parties isn't engaging in
The sexual act, basically, yeah.
depriving the other spouse from romance or intimacy or sexual acts, then a long enough abstainment from it can lead to the dissolution of marriage. You can accept that.
Yeah, I mean that's a choice that a man always has, right? If the woman keeps denying him his request, basically he has a choice, right? That's the deprivation of basically maybe the marriage is not working, you can say that, right? But he has a complete right over her body. That's something too radical of a concept, pretty much, right?
Yeah, the reason we can distinguish these things, though, is because it's, in the case of Islam, it's closer to rape. In the case of a marital duty, a general embedded marital duty to be intimate or consummate the marriage, let's say, right? Lest it results in divorce, is very different, because that just involves a departing from the relationship, whereas coercion doesn't. And the way we can delineate between the two things is that let me just give you an example from the United Kingdom context. There are certain forms of coercion that crosses the line to the point where it would constitute rape, right? So if, for example, you say to someone, "Give me sex," or "I'm never going to be in a relationship with you. I'm going to quit the relationship." That is not generally considered rape in the United Kingdom, right?
Right.
Or let's say, give me, let's have sex, or I'm just not going to buy you a Land Rover. Again, that is not considered rape. However, what's considered rape is the following: give me sex, or I'm not going to give you that £1.50 for food. Give me sex, or I'm going, or you will, end up in prison. Give me sex, or I'm going to kick you out in the middle of the desert.
I'll beat you up. Yeah, I'll beat you up, or something like, yeah. All those are considered as coercions, basically, right?
Yeah, but if you notice, the beat you up is very obvious. What I'm giving other contexts where there's a bad negative.
Right.
Like for example, I won't give you £1.50 for food. Right now, what's that? Why is that important? Because not. So you can contrast that from the other one, the other thing that I said. I'm not going to buy you a Land Rover. And the reason is because when you reject somebody when you demand sex for a Land Rover, in the sense that I'll give you a Land Rover if you or I'm not going to give you the Land Rover, there is no real coercion in the sense that there isn't a life or death or bad or negative or extreme situation.
It's not a necessity, right? It's not a necessity that you are depriving the other person from.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a gain that she can make if she consents to the sex. But if she doesn't, there is no sacrifice or compromise that is so devastating that it warrants the title of rape. Now the same example, the UK law is formulated like this in order to track these distinctions. The same example can be, in a different context, entirely coercion and therefore merit-worthy of the term rape. For example, again, let's hear it again. I'm not going to give, if you don't give me sex, I'm not going to give you a Land Rover. Right? But this time, this person is psychologically immature to the point where, and or if not immature, and or she is a lifelong obsessive fan of Land Rovers. And finally, she's found a Land Rover. Finally. Or something like that. And she would never, ever be able to otherwise get a Land Rover. And it's so devastating to her if she loses this opportunity that that it'll ultimately amount to coercion in a similar way where somebody needs to have sex to eat food. It feels like that to her. In that circumstance, it could be rape. So it is very, very fine-tuned to the circumstances. So this is why in a UK context, if let's say somebody gives you an opportunity, let's say you give a prostitute a chance to have £1 million or something like that, and she feels compelled by it and therefore has sex, that won't be rape. But in a different context, if it creates that sort of desperation, if the prostitute was in a serious situation where it was life or death for her, right, or psychologically life or death, even if it wasn't objectively life or death situation, it's a psychology that matters, right? She could be mistaken about it, but if she's like a lifelong fan of XYZ, and you can give that to her, and if only if she has sex with you, right? And you use that as a coercive tool. In those circumstances, it can be rape.
Right. And it's going to be much harder to prove it, but yes, I mean, in a more subtle way, it could be coercion on her as well, even though some might think that as a prostitute, you have, or a person coming on to her has a legal right, basically, because of having made a payment. But then the situation you put through is a very different one, pretty much, right?
Yeah. Even in this context, that you're right. The first part with the legal right thing, but in this context, that even before the legal, this is even before a transaction happening. Yeah, that is coercion from the get-go. The transaction itself was formed through a coercion.
Right. That's what I'm saying. There is a very subtle point to it, pretty much, right? Even before the transaction happened, right?
Yeah. I mean, through the temptatious offer, it created a coercion for somebody in a desperate situation. So what we're looking for is desperacy, life and death, danger, risk to health. These are things that would help us identify this is a coercive transaction, and in a different context, it's a non-coercive transaction. And my point is for these examples is that if you apply it to the area of Islam, the husband saying to somebody that you will be cursed eternally by angels and you will be suffering hellfire is a coercive transaction. It is actually even more devastating than the £1.50 thing, because it's like putting a gun to the head.
It is a much more. It is what do you say? It's infinitely more coercive, if you want to put it that way, pretty much. Because
exactly.
I mean, consider this: you have an eternity of hellfire in your mind, right? And that psychologically that puts you in a state that you don't have no as a choice at all, right? You don't have that choice, even if your mind and body says so, right? But you don't have that choice.
Yeah, exactly. So Daniel may want to equate it with modern day Western jurisdictions and so on. Let's say, well, and where you can refuse. I mean, because he's saying you can't. You're not forcing the woman to do it. You're just giving her a temptatious offer, and with that has a coercive backing, let's say, and telling her the consequences of the refusal, but you're not physically forcing it. Again, I dispute that a little bit, because I'm not sure that's what Daniel is saying here, right? Because why is he talking about rape in the first place? But whatever,
right? There's a bit of a disconnection between what he's talking about in this essay and the video. In the video, said you can't physically force yourself on somebody. On here, on this article, as we'll see,
here he's much more open about it.
Yeah. It looks like you can physically force. I mean, it's pretty obvious that a physical force is rape, right? A physical force would be rape. But let's just talk in the context of just threatening her with a punishment in the afterlife. And you may try to compare that with a threat that might happen in this life. Well, a similar sort of threat would possibly be coercion and therefore rape. Coercion of the illegal sense. And it would be rape, like the £1.50 thing that I talked about, like maybe a power disparity between the employer and the employee resulting in the termination of contract. Maybe in those circumstances, particularly where there's a life or death, desperate situation going on. Not all forms of termination of contract may amount to a rape. So it's very, very sensitive to the facts. But as we can see, even in the Western sphere, we do recognize certain forms of threats or duress that's created that might coerce somebody into sex to be rape. And I suggest that in this marital context that Daniel is providing, that is probably rape, yeah, because you're threatening somebody with eternal hellfire. You're saying that they're going to be a bad person. That creates an existential threat. Yeah, the fact that he may want to emphasize that, no, the woman has a choice though. I mean, she has the choice to still refuse it. The point is, well, women have a choice as well to refuse sex in the circumstance of £1.50, to survive. But
right.
Yeah, in principle, yeah, you have a choice to take a gun to the head and be shot and killed, or give you all your money. You have a choice. Technically, you have a choice.
I think,
Yeah.
Martin, I would say that Daniel knows that there's no choice, pretty much, right? I mean, he's smart enough to know that she doesn't have a choice. I mean, as you illustrated, there is a coercion going on there. I mean, even if even if Daniel says that she has a choice to refuse, on the back of his mind, he knows that she would be cursed by the angels, right? And husband has a right to tell that to her. That, these are the verses. This is what is written in the Hadith, and if you believe in this theology, this is exactly what's going to happen. So this is a very obvious coercion that's going on. I mean, you may say this implied coercion, but I think it's very obvious.
No, it's not implied; it's obvious coercion. But let me just again emphasize to our audience. Now, there's a difference between immoral coercion and moral coercion, or lawful coercion or unlawful coercion, right? Every single thing will involve some form of coercion. So we may not even want to use the word coercion. We may say persuasion, in the moral sense. We may say consequence. We may say ramification that they may run away, right? When I say to Philo, look, Philo, we need to stream today, or tomorrow I'm not going to be free, we'll have to stream next week. I'm in some sense giving you a reason, a consequence, a ramification that will weigh on your shoulder, that will help you decide whether you want to come on the show today, right? Now, have I coerced you in the immoral sense? Well, no, I've not, because I've said something that would make you think, wait a minute, if I don't go today, I'll have to wait a week, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the reason is because it doesn't, again, the identifiers that I talked about, it doesn't pertain to these life, death, extreme situations, these desperate situations. The same thing again could indeed be coercion. For example, if I said to you, if you don't come on today, we're going to just turn off everything and turn off all stuff. And let's say you were in a particular situation of desperation in life, right? Like this podcast, this stream was vital to your continued existence, right? You will suffer a great deal, right? Not just temporarily, maybe even severely, to the point of your well-being will be in real serious threat of continuing to live. Absolutely, that would be, I would say, coercion, and I might be acting immorally here, and I might be forcing you to continue on the on the stream. So we need to distinguish between those sort of types of things. And in the case of the Islamic coercion for sex, that's the type of coercion that we're talking about, because it is like a life-death situation. We're talking about eternal curses. We're talking about infinite punishment. That is a coercion. Just because it's in the future and some other realm doesn't change it. Yeah, it is equivalent to a gun coming to your head and saying, I'm going to shoot you and you're going to suffer. You're going to be in real pain unless you give me all your money. Daniel can say, oh, well, she has a choice to give the money or take the suffering. No, it's not a real quality, real choice. It's the immoral sense of coercion, not the moral sense of coercion that we were talking before. And I just want to really lay that home so everybody knows that.
Right. I think that's what I'm saying. I think Daniel knows it very well. He's just the kind of language he's using. He's just making it seem as if she has a choice. Basically, he can't coerce her. He can, and the word that he used is a reasonable request, basically, right? I mean, and probably what he means is reasonable request according to Islam. Basically, if she's not going through menstruation or she's not ill, probably then the request is reasonable, pretty much, right? And those are the only two things probably he says reasonable according to, pretty much, right? That's what his definition of reasonable is, right? In all others, I mean, it seems as if when he says reasonable, then she's, he's giving this aura or air of it not being, forceful request. But that's not the case. I mean, you and I know him very well in terms of his thought process that we have reviewed his videos for so long, right? Anyways, you want to add something to it, or shall we read further into the article? Or shall we move on to the other one?
Let's just continue. I think we have to finish the article since we started it, so we have to be very quick, right?
No, let's see where we are, right? All right, here we are, right?
Yeah.
All right. In pre-modern cultures, religions, husbands and wives have duties to have sex with one another. Additionally, husbands and wives generally express some type of consent to marriage, and consent to marriage is consent to marital duties, including sex on an ongoing basis. Right. I mean, this is like a one-time contract once you have married someone. So I think again the kind of thing that that Daniel is exuding from this sentence, it seems to me, is that he's saying once you have signed the contract, your contract is more on like ticking off that as a sex object, pretty much, right? You don't have a companion as in, you're not gonna respect each other and everything. You probably are gonna do that, but as when it comes to consent on sex, she doesn't have that, but on other matters she might have. So I'm wondering why it is that Daniel considers that one particular field you have let go of that consent from your wife, pretty much your partner, right? I don't see that point over here.
Yeah. So the first thing that what's commonplace throughout his entire argument is the comparison with the liberal West, and he's trying to justify Islam by saying there's a comparable sort of reality within the liberal West, right? And he's trying to use these liberal principles to exemplify it. Again, this kind of shows a kind of, I don't know whether this is just a means to be persuasive, to his broader audience, that look, even the West does it, and therefore Islam is also similarly has the same justification, so it can't be anything wrong because even the West has these kind of practices. Because I don't think that's what you're supposed to do as a Muslim, because in a Muslim you're anchoring your beliefs on divine command theory. You're not supposed to emulate the West. So what's going on there is, so it's good because the West does it. So if the West didn't do it, then he has no grounds to make an analogy. So he's trying to use the concept of a contract to show, well, in this particular paragraph he's not doing it, but before, and we know that's before this article as well, we know that's what generally Daniel Haqiqatjou does. He compares something in the West that happens
and goes, look, just like the West does it, and Muslims do that broadly as well. For example, they compare it to, apostasy laws to treason laws to explain the rationale behind it. And so, look, you guys have treason laws and we have treason laws. You're not supposed to do that, right? Divine command theory. You're not supposed to water down Islam to that extent that it gets its rationales from man-made laws. Like, what kind of embarrassing religion is that?
Exactly. I mean, it's like cherry picking. Whenever it suits you, pick whatever you can and just try to make analogies over there. But then when it doesn't, just discard the whole West is corrupt. Whole West is
exactly.
immoral, right? Yeah.
And just like I described the United Kingdom law system and many other law systems, especially in the United States, have distinguished between coercive sex or sex that involves a bit of pressure, but it's not coercion of the illegal kind, which is recognized by law. Why isn't Daniel talking about that? If he's referring to what happens in the West or how it was in reality, like he's just picking, like you just said, he's picking and choosing the concepts that adhere to his, but is that it? You can just make an analogy. I don't argue about I don't argue about the merits of democracy by just making an analogy. I explain why it's superior to others. I explain it. It's not enough just to say there's an analogous system somewhere else, because that could be wrong as well, right? Then
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So who gives a shit, right? So that's what it kind of does. Now, let me just backtrack a little bit. Sometimes in philosophy, you do engage in something what John Rawls called the reflective equilibrium. Philosophical thinking about ethics in particular, you may draw analogies to show that here's our consistent moral principles. Why aren't we being consistent in this new scenario? One example maybe with veganism, let's say. For example, we may compare the suffering that we enact to factory farmed animals, and compare to the restriction on violence that is disallowed when we say, no, you can't torture that cat, you can't torture that animal, that dog, for your visual pleasure or your audible pleasure. So why are you, by analogy, not extending the same principle to factory farmed animals? That's what we can do, right? But the reason we do this, the reason we do that is because we have already accepted the moral fabric underlying it, right? We accept that. We say, you agree with this, don't you? And we say, yes, I agree that we shouldn't cause suffering to dogs. Then you go, all right, if you agree you shouldn't cause suffering to dogs, why do you cause suffering to cows? Why the double standard? But
Exactly.
Daniel, notice Daniel's not doing that. He's just saying, here's some principle in the way. We don't agree with that, though. So what are you doing? You're not even doing the moral equilibrium that John Rawls talked about properly, right? The reflective equilibrium. He's just saying, here's some analogous principle in the West, and it's forcing it down our gobs, yeah? Forcing it down our throat.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, we don't accept this. I don't care what people did 10 centuries ago. I don't care if wife beating was allowed 20 centuries ago. What the heck? So I just don't get it.
I mean, just because he can't make an independent argument, he's using the crutches of the Western, value systems, pretty much, in a sense, right? Yeah. Even if those value systems might be flawed in some ways, pretty much, right? So yeah, that's the kind of, in a sense, hypocrisy, I would say, from his side.
Yeah.
All right. So let's. You want to add something else to it? Yeah.
Yeah, but just more specific to the paragraph. I know I've kind of gone on many tangents here, and the reason I am going on a bit because I'm very aware that Daniel may watch this, so I may as well be a little bit more thorough, and that's why I'm probably talking a bit longer than usual. I talk long anyway. So he says, additionally, husbands and wives generally express some type of consent to marriage, and consent to marriage is to consent to marital duties, including sex on an ongoing basis for preceding reasons. It is considered possible for husbands and wives to rape one another. Again, he just, as I said, he's just appealing to a reality that was the case. It's not a reality that we accept anymore to be the case. So why should we accept that? And the reason we don't is because we don't believe in one-time contracts anymore. And furthermore, one-time contracts have been discarded for these sort of type of realities. For example, you can't have a one-time contract with your employee. There's a statutory law imposition into the contract, implied even, that there has to be a notice period that he can withdraw from the contract, and he is able to trigger the contract to terminate the contract and then leave the contract. Employer can't stipulate explicitly in the contract that you are forever my employee. We realized, as we became more enlightened, that workers don't belong to the employers, because that would amount to slavery, right? And that's not a good way to be, because it leads to exploitation, harm, selfish pleasure for the employer. And in order to level the playing field, labor laws, labor unions, labor legislation,
and also it leads to an unhealthy society in a broader sense.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't need to go. Exactly, but we don't. It's clearly kind of disheartening. We have to explain why it's bad. Yeah,
right.
I think everyone knows why it's bad, because nobody, if they put themselves in the shoes of a slave, they want to be in the position of a slave, right?
Yeah. I think it's good to give this analogy to highlight our point, pretty much, right? I agree, but we don't want to veer off to another tangent.
Exactly. So the point is, contracts are regulated. The contracts have been changed and amended and modified so that certain things you just can't contract to. You just can't contract to, for example, like I said, slavery. You just can't contract to chopping off your arm. You can't just have that contract. Not without, in certain jurisdictions, you may be able to get away with it, especially with a medical practitioner advising it's like you're fully healthy, you're mentally well, and it's necessary. But most countries, and this is my personal belief as well, in terms of, forget what countries do actually, my philosophy, I don't think we should, our first answer to somebody who's got, let's say, there are people with body dysmorphia, for example, they hate their arm, they have like a syndrome where they will feel better if they get rid of the arm. We should treat these people first, right? Because that arm is
right.
what
I think that conversation is gonna veer off into a very different tangent. But I agree to your point. That's that talking about those body dysmorphia, or that's
So
gonna
again,
lead in.
I'll just give you another example of a contract in which you just can't do. So, okay, so let's just be specific to this one. Specific to sex. Why can't you contract to continuous sex? So, like the Sexual Offences Act in 2003, and many in the UK, and many different statutes in Europe, in the United States, have made sexual consent to be one that requires continuous consent that you can withdraw from any time. So even in the middle of a sexual activity, you can withdraw from it, right? And the reason for that is sex is qualitatively different to other forms of relations, right? And the reason for that is because we recognize that already to be the case. The reason we think, for example, rape is classified differently than any other assault, right? If I punch you in the face, you might get, a couple of months in jail. But if I rape somebody, you can get sentenced for many, many years. Rape is one of the most horrific crimes. Why? Because sexual violation is a different form. It's a subset of an assault. It's a subset of a violation over another person's body. But by including the element of sexuality on it, it creates a different sort of harm, a psychosocial harm.
It's a psychological harm as well as bodily, probably.
Exactly, because it involves objectification, commodification, involves this sort of lust, involves endangering a woman to pregnancy, many things, and it has this special kind of harm in the human psyche, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So similarly, if we recognize sexual sort of crimes like that to be of a higher plane, then this also follows that we can't just consent to it unilaterally and unanimously. Just like a child can't consent to infant, labor laws, just like a person cannot consent to slavery, and just like somebody can't consent to chopping their arms off, in most circumstances, I would say, apart from the extreme circumstances where it's like a medically necessary thing. But most of the time, we would say, go to the doctor, get mental health help first. And just like those things, you can't simply consent to sex because it's qualitatively different. Not the one-time consent. Yeah, you can consent once and then you can withdraw it from it as well. And every single jurisdiction has recognized this. So consent to sex is something that you can withdraw from anytime, unlike other forms of things. So we can draw an asymmetry. So Daniel is doing his best to say, like every other thing we consent to, like here's the main point. Just like the man's financial responsibility, who he consents to, and he can't just withdraw from. Can't just go, oh, I'm not feeling it today. I'm not going to go work. Yeah, like that's what he's trying to say. I'm not going to go work anymore. I'm not going to look after you. You can't just withdraw from that. You can't just withdraw from sex. No, it's not. They're not the same. A woman has a stronger right to withdraw from sex than a man has to withdraw from that responsibility, because that's not the same type of qualitatively same type of action. We think sex is on a higher plane, right? This is why these crimes are characterized in different ways. For example, if your employer makes you work for one day, yeah, it's going to be bad. It's wrong. But if your employer rapes you, you see it in a different light, right? Because one is on the hierarchy of bodily invasions, higher of a force. And therefore, in reverse, in the context of a contract, you can't also think they're the same. That if you can't withdraw from financial remuneration, financial responsibilities, then you can't withdraw from sexual responsibilities. And I'm saying, yeah, you can. And 1 minute, just give me one more minute. And because of because a sexual forcing a woman to have sex, qualitatively has a different sort of harm than forcing a man to work. They're not the same, right? A man telling a man.
Exactly. I think this should be the most highlighted point, pretty much, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're not the same, because a man. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's bad to force a man to work. Or if you completely force him in a devastating way. But in many respects, we kind of understand that if you signed up to a duty, let's say, to look after your children, you have a parental responsibility to look after your children, and it'll be wrong to abstain from it and be lazy. We may say, look, bro, you're an adult, go to work. Stop being lazy. You have a child, right? You can't just withdraw from the responsibility. Be a man, go to work, or be a responsible human. Not just, you don't have to make this gender biased. If you're a woman as well, maybe we say, be a responsible human, do what it takes for your child to survive, or something like that. We honor this sort of thing, right? On the other hand, a woman needing to have, it's not the same in terms of the consequence, right? Men and women will feel much better if they work for their family. Women, on the other hand, if they get raped or forced into having sex, it's not the same. Biologically, it's not the same. Men and women can work, and they've been doing it all their lives. Women have, rape has always been a pernicious assault on the body when they've done it, right? When my dad used to tell me to go to, like when I was young, get a job. When I got up from the sofa and eventually went and got a job when I was a kid, it didn't feel like I was raped. Yeah. Yeah.
That's an extreme example.
Yeah. It didn't feel like I was raped. And I'll make more. I know I said I'll make last point. This is an important point I'm going to make next. Furthermore, a woman being unable to refuse sex at one point doesn't lead to the collapse of the socioeconomic of the relationship. It could be rescheduled. It could be negotiated. She'll probably have better sex with you tomorrow when she's not tired anymore, or next week, or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one point that I wanted to come upon and come on basically and say that let's say let's say she's not willing, but now because of your contract through marriage, one time contract, now she's kind of coerced, right? Implicitly or explicitly coerced into this sexual request, basically comply to these sexual requests. Now if she's unwilling, you see that how quickly that is going to deteriorate your relationship with him, right? Her relationship with him. Would you take that, or take a no for one time or a couple of times and maintain that healthy relationship and then have better sex, pretty much, right? I mean, these are the smaller points. Maybe he's not thinking through, right? I mean, consider that a woman is being coerced into having sex almost every day, while she might be okay having, sex probably twice a week or something like that, right? But because of her husband, now she's coerced into doing that. How quickly is her relationship gonna deteriorate from there in her mind? Her psychological thinking is really playing on her basically right now, and that's gonna play on her basically. It's not good. The relationship is not gonna be same, pretty much, right? Either you believe that she's become a slave, so she has to obey you, or think that she's your other half partner for life, and a respectful partner for
Exactly.
life.
And we can appeal to evolution to explain some of these things. I mean, the fact that men work, if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, men, even if they are somewhat lazy and may not do their job, if they're once they're forced to work, it's in line with their maybe energy, right? In line with a fulfilling life. Like we again, I'm talking about in a very patriarchal way, indeed, but we're looking at through a patriarchal lens. But if we assume like men are the providers, men are the primary breadwinners. It's this is this instinct that's existed through every species beyond humankind, right? Males provide, and that is to say that this is a force or obligation or duty on the male in a way that it's analogous to a woman having sex under pressure. Is not the same. Again, I'm just reiterating my point before. Forcing males to work and bring the resources for the family is not the same as forcing a woman to have sex. Because again, pinning back to evolutionary theory, rape has always been devastating, right? Unless you're lions or a lioness, maybe rape might have some sort of functional effect. But most evolutionary theories regarding rape, evolutionary theories regarding rape, is it an evolutionary advantage? Did rape evolve as a device to transmit, DNA for certain people? They've been debunked. For humans particularly, right? Rape may have worked as a functional thing in certain other species. Again, but it
Right.
doesn't.
Even maybe down the hierarchy in some primates, it may have helped, right? Spread the
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But even if we accept that biological rationale, that doesn't speak to whether the individual members of that species feel happy once they've been raped, because evolution works in terms of group of averages, right? And sometimes from the gene-centric point of view, like Richard Dawkins talks about, your body could be used as a hostage to your genes, despite your body being pleasured or happy, but feeling pleasured or happy by this particular thing. Yeah, it's good for your genes, which may not be good for you. It's good for the transmission of your genes, perhaps, that you're raped or something. So let me actually clarify that. It's good for the transmission of the rapist, that his genes are going to be, replicated, but it might not be good for the woman, right?
Right.
So that's even a.
I think in this line of thought, you can give maybe a little bit of credence to man's request, husband's request, for once. If there is a condition, let's say, think of an extreme example: the man doesn't have a progeny, right? And his probably this is only the one day that he's gonna have a sperm count that's gonna be up there to have him have a progeny, right? Let's think of this extreme situation. In that case, probably he can say that I have a genuine request, right? And I mean, it's still debatable that can you say that a no is going to work or not, right? That would be really. But in any other situation, the man, if he's thinking of doing it for pleasure, then he can go back to what he was doing before marriage for one day, right? I mean,
Mm.
who's stopping him, basically, right?
Mm.
I mean, a much healthier ethic would have been to, if God had given certain instructions for the man to be a bit more of a Casanova, so that he can create the conditions for voluntary sex. That would create, something like a Kama Sutra, some sort of
Exactly.
ritual. That would have been far more constructive. It would have reached the aim of having healthy procreation, and so on and so forth, instead of having this kind of
This diktat,
tyrannical,
basically. This diktat, basically, in a
this
sense.
mandate of sex, which
Uh,
which possibly which is hard, which is probably not very productive, and it's not very healthy. It's not very nice. It's not very well mannered. And despite what Haqiqatjou says, it's not the same as a man forcing a man to do certain activity. It's not the same as any other activity. He can't just relativize all this away by comparing it to all other activities. Like rape is one, so sex is one activity. Eating a sandwich is another activity. Pulling the drawer is another activity, and they're all the same. They're not. Sex is not like eating an apple, right? It's a different sort of despite even what certain feminists may say. So certain feminists may say that sex is just an activity. We should have the freedom to have sex. I don't take that view. Although I believe in people should have the right to do what they do, but that doesn't mean that people shouldn't be responsible, right? There's a checklist of things that you ought to do before you willy-nilly have sex with somebody, because you may fall prey to rape. Right,
right.
especially for women, and any responsible father would say the same thing to their daughter, right? So if we accept that, then we can also accept that forcible sex is very different from forcible any other activity.
Right. Right.
Mm.
Exactly. All right, let's move on with this article, finish it, and then we have another article. Do you want to touch upon that article, or shall we
Yeah, we
take
may
up
not.
in part two?
Yeah, let's just finish this one, and then we'll see how much time we've got left.
All right, so such a view is standard in various legal texts. Consider the Christianized system of British family law. Writing in the 17th century, the British jurist Sir Matthew Hale famously states that according to this system, the husband cannot be guilty of a rape committed. So this is the same thing. At least these debates were going on in 17th century British law system, basically, right? And I think I highlighted that point, basically, that women were considered to be a property pretty much all throughout the world, and that's one of the reasons, right, why this could have happened. But we've already talked in detail about that. The same basic perspective is reflected in pre-modern Islamic fiqh test. Uh, these texts do not acknowledge any concept of marital rape. Hence, the texts do not state that it is forbidden for one spouse to compel another to have sex. And now this is really surprising, Madan. I mean, the physiology of two sexes is such that, I mean, it is not that it has never happened, that uh, that um, a female has raped a male, right? There have been instances, but at least penetrative rape is very, very difficult in uh, the other way around, pretty much, right? So even physiologically wise, pretty much, right? I mean, women have been under, what do you call, yeah, they haven't been given the same rights. I mean, if that this kind of a right comes from an all good God, then they have been really robbed of some real, you know, uh, something, and it's in a sense that the right hasn't been given to them properly, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
What's surprising about this is that it kind of is a bit in discordance with his video. Look what it says there. Indeed, some texts, especially Hanafi works, explicitly state that a husband is entitled to compel his wife to have sex, i.e., if she is refusing to do her duty without a valid excuse like illness. So, what does it mean to say the husband is entitled to compel his wife? Now, he's talking about in some Hanafi interpretations. So
I think, yeah. I mean, these. He's departing from what he said in the video, pretty much, right? In the video, and that's why I said that he's being what do you call shifty over there, in a sense. What do you know? It's he's saying those words to make it seem as if it's just he can make a reasonable request, right? But it doesn't seem so. There's a clear mention of coercion over here, right? Compel is a coercion, pretty much here.
but in this situation, does it actually mean, for example, grab her and then make her have sex? It could be.
It
And I'll
could be,
explain
right?
why.
I mean,
Because the man has the right to punish his wife as well, right? So it can do, right? If you look at the verses that allow corporal punishment, I mean, some people say.
I mean, I know for a fact. I know for a fact that there are some rulings within some school within one of those four that beating is allowed if she doesn't give in to the sex, pretty much, right? For a
Yeah.
sexual request, right? And whether that's the mainstream take of the scholars ulama or not is not something I'm 100% sure of. But
Well,
I didn't want
well,
to I didn't want to speak up because I wasn't 100% sure on
yeah.
that.
Well, think about it, Philo. I mean, Daniel Haqiqatjou accepts that beating is allowed, wife beating is allowed. In very many other contexts, in very many other videos, he said he accepts the idea that a man can beat his wife, right? And he tried to defend this by explaining again his typical way of doing it, which is to compare it to the West. The West allows violence in certain circumstances. For example, you can be detained and arrested by the cops and punished by the state. And since we accept certain forms of authority to punish us in the Islamic sphere, the husband is an authority, and he has the authority to punish his wife.
Yeah, that kind of, again, it really baffles me, his kind of the kind of analogies he draws and cherry picks onto, and just forgets the whole context, basically, right, of those those kind of analogies he brings, basically. I mean, where does this come from? A lawmaker or a police officer has a right to detain you, but there are certain conditions that are met over there, right?
Oh yeah.
You're talking about the life-threatening situations and all those, and to apply that kind of a situation to beating a wife, it just really baffles me pretty much.
Yeah, it's not even the same. It's not even the same thing, because no police officer is allowed to beat you for no reason. No teacher is allowed to beat you for no reason.
Exactly.
No judge is allowed to beat you, and no person is allowed to beat you.
No, in his mind, not giving in to his request is disobedience of Allah, basically. Your supreme deity, basically. You're disrespecting supreme deity, and that's why I'm allowed to beat you, pretty much. I'm guessing that's what his thinking would be behind that kind of a take, basically, because you're breaking the law of a land when the officer catches you, detains you, probably. That's the same thing is happening. You are breaking the law of the supreme deity, pretty much, and that's why I'm allowed to beat you. I'm thinking that's what the kind of argument he's gonna put.
Well, no. Even if you accept the first part, which is that there's a breach of a law, the comparison is wrong, because in the comparison he's trying to show with the Western sphere, they're not incidents of beatings. So what is he talking about? He has to talk, in order to make it comparable, he has to talk about the beatings that were administered 3-4 centuries ago. 5 to 10 centuries ago. because that seems to be the only type of example that helps him. Yeah, it tells us that Haqiqatjou needs to look back in history into medieval barbaric forms and mutilating forms of, punishments and practices and so on, and go, look, here's my justification for Islam, right? Like, that's telling it in and of itself.
Exactly.
Yeah, like why? But whatever the case, his examples don't make any sense, because the police doesn't willy-nilly, for example, just punish you. The police has to go through a process that's controlled and regulated. They need evidence. They need a transparent process. They need to subject it to a particular court and to prove it in a particular court. The husband doesn't need to do any of those things. Yeah, the police has to do it based on democratically elected laws that we've decided to be correct and analyzed, and you can have philosophical arguments defending it. Whereas God's laws, they tend to be opaque or arbitrary, or not in line with, or if you go for divine command theory, it's just random. We don't even really know whether God is evil or God is good. So you have that problem. So there's a problem of whether law is moral itself. Then you have a problem with the administration of the law, where in the sense that the husband can, behind closed doors, be the judge, jury, and executioner, all in one. Yeah, because somehow, magically, police officers who get called out for police brutality, administration of officials who do who are very corrupt, judges who can be politically motivated and biased, racist, whatever you want to call it, somehow when they become a husband behind closed doors, when there's nobody watching, they become perfect administrators of justice. Yeah, that's when they want to beat their wife, they know exactly when to do it perfectly.
Right.
It's stupid. This is a dangerous precedent, even if it can be administered right. Let's say it's deserved in certain contexts. Let's just ignore the problem that beating itself is wrong for a minute. Let's say it is deserved, it's right. Let's say let's just go with that for a minute. I mean, everybody understands the context in which I'm talking. It's a hypothetical.
Right. I'm just wondering, this God's law, why is it so that it represents the mind of a 7th century Bedouin Arab people, pretty much, right? It is doing everything to please those warrior clan of 7th century Bedouin Arabs, pretty much, right? I don't know. Maybe there is a reason for it. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly.
I mean, you see it, right? I mean, who would write such a law, right? I mean, is it a God who created men, or is it those 7th century men who created that God, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious here, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can make the argument that this is fitting for the 7th century lifestyle, and therefore evincing of the mind of a 7th century person.
Right.
They could in reverse make the argument that if it is resembling of a 7th century lifestyle, it's probably because it was catered towards a 7th century lifestyle where you didn't have courts, you don't have procedures, you don't have the resources. You needed some sort of reinforcement mechanism, and this was the best way to administer. But the problem is, because Islam is for all time.
That's the problem, exactly. I mean, it can't then be for all the times, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Or otherwise, then we're. Yeah, I mean, I think if we go into that direction, I think we're gonna go for another an hour or two, probably.
Yeah, I mean,
so let's not go there.
Yeah, but just very quick, I know I'm not gonna go there. I'm gonna cut it off in a second. But if it was to be like that, it would have been interwoven within this Quranic code that this is this temporary measure right now, but eventually develop a system where these things don't happen in this particular way. Develop a system that deals with it differently, that's more responsive to modern day social conditions, right?
Right.
Where you don't have to utilize corporal punishments anymore, because corporal punishments are shown to be useless. Child beating, state-endorsed corporal punishments, they're hit and miss. And regardless of the empirical ambiguity of suggesting whether or not corporal punishments are efficacious, there are alternative dispute resolution or punishment means that can create better, the same, if not better, outcomes that doesn't involve violence. And
Right.
so why do we need to resort to this sort of thing in the husband context?
Right.
if you said something like that, I think it would be more apparent that this has probably come from a wiser mind, maybe, because then you have the. Here's the thing, even these are layers of problems here, right? Because even if it makes sense for the time, let's say it said everything that we said. On the 7th century, do this one. The 8th century, update it. 9th century, do this, and it has this kind of beautiful progressive development out of the medieval wife-beating act and to a renewed one, which allows for a different sort of morality for today's 21st, whatever century we're in. I forget. Yeah. So let's say it did that. It still would be, the layers of problem are so deep, it'll still be a problem, because then it still encounters the problem of evil. Why would a God do it like that? And not why would God create a world where it's like that? You know, where
just Madan juxtapose this problem with the sex slavery problem, right? And Daniel himself, in one of the first video that we ran, that wasn't probably relevant, but now probably I can make it relevant somehow. In that video, he said, in that clip, he said, right, where would those women who were who came to the war, where would they go? Their husbands died and all those things. They would be assimilated in the. See, that's the thing, right? I mean, if the slavery were to die, it didn't die for up until 18th century, and the Islamic nations were the last ones to abolish slavery. But if that was not the intention of this God, then why did it keep running for centuries after centuries and into the next millennia, pretty much, right? And it appears that God, I mean, the kind of argument that we are trying to make, that those medieval laws, if those laws were only for those times, then they ran well past their own expiry date, pretty much, right? And it was, if it were not for Western civilization, pretty much, the Muslim countries would still be practicing slavery, right? They were forced into, Geneva Convention and all those conventions to abolish slavery and all those things, pretty much, right? So yeah, I mean, it behooves me pretty much, in a sense, that these I mean, Haqiqatjou still says that, okay, I mean, what we did in the 7th century for those women whose husbands were murdered, and sometimes their husbands were not even murdered, but they were taken as slaves, and their marriage were considered annulled after. Yeah.
Even that point would be an issue under the problem of evil lens, in the sense that God did not have to create a world in which, husbands or slave captors had to capture female slaves for the continuation of the human population. That he wouldn't have created these conditions in the first place, where in the very same sense, God would not have created animals who eat other animals, right? In the very same sense, God wouldn't create gratuitous punishment, gratuitous suffering.
Problem of gratuitous evil, pretty much, right? In a sense, or gratuitous suffering, you might want to call it.
Gratuitous suffering. Well, gratuitous evil, we can say gratuitous suffering. I mean the same thing in this context. Basically, so you're not off the hook by showing that it was a moral necessity of the time. If you can show that it was a moral necessity of the time, you still have to then deal with the fact that. So you have to understand, why do we deploy these sort of arguments? Why do we deploy these moral arguments? Like Islam has an immoral, let's say, convention, principle, idea. We try to show that this is man-made. Or this is not morally correct, and God won't allow, God, this was not inspired or created by God, right? Because it's more likely to be man-made.
It reflects the psyche of the 7th century human beings, pretty much, right? I mean, their thought process, their surroundings, their way of behaving and taking care of things.
So when somebody says, let's say somebody makes the objection, Islam allows slavery, what conclusion are they trying to derive from that? that it's wrong. It's wrong. Like, so some people might be emotional and say that I don't want to follow Islam because it has slavery in it. But I don't think that's especially adept of a realization, in the sense that are you then just saying that you don't, because you don't like a particular?
Yeah, I think that's still an emotional argument. But
Yes.
if you dig a little bit deeper, then probably you might rationalize it and then think through
Yeah.
it properly. Yeah.
You need to do, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to avoid the emotionality of it, because I don't think that's enough. You can't just say that I don't like slavery and therefore Islam is wrong. You have to explain why that. You need more premises to lead to the conclusion. And you might say that slavery is wrong. I expect a benevolent God not to allow slavery, and therefore this is not from a benevolent God, and therefore Islam is false. Right? Something like that.
Right.
Something like that. It could be many, very
Yeah,
many
in a
different
good way. That's beautifully put. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now, do necessity arguments rescue the Muslim proponent from that? No, it doesn't, because because any sort of necessity that you might show of the 7th century, let's say, any sort of necessity, is something, broadly speaking, God could have avoided. And therefore, it still falls into the same sort of dichotomy of, is this from God or is this from humans? Is this man-made or is this from human? Is this man-made or is this from God? If a benevolent God existed, would he create the world state of affairs to one where it would have been a necessity for a 7th century civilization to require slavery or civilizations? No. So again, it broadly falls under the problem of evil, all of these types of arguments. This is why I categorize all of these types of arguments as a subset of the problem of evil. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Oh, yeah, rightly so.
Yeah, so in that sense, Haqiqatjou's point's irrelevant. Showing that it was a necessity of the time doesn't explain it. Anything. In fact, it suggests that this still didn't come from God, because God wouldn't have made it such that it was a necessity of the time.
Right. Yeah. I think we need to review one of his. I think we did talk about tackling slavery. Madan, feedback. So we did, I think, talk about tackling this slavery, sex slavery, or slavery in Islam stream. Probably that never happened, but we should do it at some later point. But what I'm going to do is take this opportunity and plug in our channel. Guys, right now, actually, and that is to be expected. This is a new channel, so we don't have a listener. But I'm hoping that later on, people are going to watch this stream. Maybe not of that much interest to you, but if you do listen to it, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share, and press that bell button, so whenever we are live, and on this channel we are only going to do streams in English. Anybody who's from the subcontinent, India, Pakistan, or in any of the Hindi, Urdu speaking countries, or they understand that language, they can also check out our main channel or the other channel called Philo Sapiens, and you'll get a lot of material over there. We have had reviewed Daniel's debate with Matt Dillahunty, and so you'll find a lot of interesting material over there, talking about some of these problem of evil, or contingency argument, kalam cosmological fine-tuning arguments, and whatnot, pretty much, right? And our very earlier videos, probably you'll find them probably cringeworthy, maybe. Concept of nothingness and all those things are still there. Maybe if you get a chance, we're gonna do them, redo those things, and hope to do them better. Probably I haven't even listened to those when we did those things long time back, so I'm not even sure they are worth listening to again or not. But anyways, yeah, Madan, sorry. Shall we go through that last part of this? And I think we should then close the stream and then tackle the other half of this article, maybe in a later stream.
Yeah,
What do you
maybe
say?
so. Yeah. Let's just see it go on. Read it. Yeah.
All right. Whatever here. I think I need some text, especially Hanafi explicitly state that a husband is entitled to compel. I think we already did talk about this, right? For example, this view may be found in the famous Hanafic text, right? The injustice of modern secular law is that it compels symmetrical obligations. Men are coerced to meet their obligations, while women can volunteer. I think the problem with Haqiqatjou is that he thinks that all obligations are equal, right? All obligations have equal weight, right?
Mm, mm.
I mean, men are coerced. I mean, he's making it seem as if men don't want to work at all, pretty much, and they are coerced to meet their obligations in terms of,
Yeah, it
fulfilling
doesn't
their.
make sense. It's not the
Yeah,
same. The same at
it's
all.
not the
Exactly.
same. I mean, I think we have said it so many times with so many
Yeah.
different intensity,
It's what, yeah.
which this point should hit home pretty much to everybody, right?
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
if you,
It's like
right, and
comparing your obligation to your wife to be there, talk to her, and stuff. Comparing that with an obligation for her to, you know, obligation to her to take a punch to the face or something like that. I don't know. They're just two
I mean,
different
I
types.
mean, I'm thinking of an analogy here. Like maybe you have an obligation. You can say that you have an obligation to your parents when they are really old, right? When then
Mm,
so one of your parent probably is like, you have to take care of them. That's probably, you can say, is an obligation in a sense, right? They can't move. They are probably, immobile or something like that. So it kind of becomes an obligation in a sense. You can say that's more of a compelling obligation than men are coerced to meet their obligations in terms of feeding their family, I think. Or even more so, much more so than,
mm.
women do have to coerce
Yeah.
for, you know
Yeah. And the other thing is doing the same thing here again, which is to maintain secular law. Like, is this one law that we have, like this kind of universal law that applies to every state and every country and every city and every society? USA, UK, Holland, Germany, they all have the same marital law. No, there are similar laws. We can say some or most secular countries have laws like of this nature, but he is making a massive hasty generalization fallacy. He's not even citing, quoting, referencing anything. He's just making it up. He's like the typical keyboard warrior who just makes things up and beats his imaginary ideas. That's what's happening now. So there is no.
exactly.
What is he talking about in terms of secular law here? Yeah, most, like, all right. So it's very hard to refute him as a result of this, apart from just saying that, right? Because if he gave a concrete example, then we could talk about it in depth. But like some society, in the UK, for example, both partners can divorce each other for lacking intimacy. In the UK, for example, both partners, have legal obligations to one another in terms of assets. In the UK, for example, both partners are subject to post-marital analysis upon dissolution of the marriage, for having those assets distributed based on the fairness principle. And it's not gender biased, it's gender neutral. Both partners are therefore assessed to the extent in which they've contributed to the marriage, extent they have sacrificed themselves to the marriage. So what's going on here? It's not just that the man has a financial obligation, right? It depends on the context. If a man promises that he's going to be the primary breadwinner, in which case, many cases that is the case, then that's the case. In certain contexts where the woman is the financial breadwinner, that's the case. What is he talking about, right? Yeah. So,
Right.
and yeah, so
I think.
yeah.
Sorry, Martin, go ahead. Finish your thought. And
Yeah, I think also in if a man doesn't sexually arouse the woman anymore, let's say, isn't following he's not having sex with his wife. He's not interested in his wife anymore. In those contexts, a woman can also say, "Look, you're in a marriage with me." Yeah, you don't need to have the view of marriage should be sex free and you can never tell your partner have sex with me. Of course, we're not stupid, right? Most jurisdictions allow that for even as a ground for divorce, right? Which means that we recognize that there is a sexual duty, But the differentiating factor is the type of coercion that Islam allows, which, according to some schools of Islam, allows physical force. In other schools, it allows coercion of a type that would be recognized in most jurisdictions like the UK as illegal coercion. And that's the problem. So I just want to highlight, there's no problem with, if you're in a relationship, of course, there's no problem. If you reach the stage where intimate relations have entered into, you could have somewhat of an expectation, done so sensitively, cautiously, with protection. When I say protection, I'm not talking about contraception. I'm talking about protecting each other's dignities and so on. You should never be compelling each other to. With mutual respect. And if somebody doesn't want to have sex, you probably should allow the leeway for it not to happen. But if somebody's depriving you of sex continuously for months and months, yeah, of course. I mean, you're in a romantic relationship. Try to repair the relationship. Find out what's wrong with you first, because you know
what's causing that separation or alienation. Probably, if you can repair that, then probably you can get back to it. And if it's irreconcilable, then you have an option, right? I mean, of course, both of them have an option, right? Irrespective of which side it's happening from, basically. The point I wanted to make here, Martin, is the irony of the fact is that Haqiqatjou is living in a Western society with secular laws and with the Western amenities and all the perks of the Western society, pretty much, right? If he thinks, if he thinks that the secular laws are so weak and don't make much sense, I mean, he's think about all the Indians and Bangladeshis and Pakistanis who move out of their country and move to a country where they find better, prospects, pretty much. I mean, if he really thinks that way, I mean, he has an option to go back to Iran or some other place, right, where he'll find a better society, probably for his thinking, right? But he's not doing that. I mean, that's the irony of the fact that he's immersed into this society where he's getting all the perks, but at the same time is really highly critical of those those laws that have given him all this freedom and the perks of the goods of the society, pretty much. But that's just a side criticism of him, pretty much. Maybe he'll consider moving into Iran or Afghanistan someday, probably, and he'll prove me wrong.
He might do, I can't comment on that exactly. I mean,
I'm saying he might just do that and then he'll prove me wrong. Oh yeah.
If I had this kind of this think about it this way. Imagine. I'm just trying to think of a known Islamophobe depicted typically as an Islamophobe. Imagine Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris living.
Douglas Murray might be a better person. Douglas Murray.
I think Douglas Murray is a bit more, but okay. Imagine Douglas Murray complaining about Islam all the time, talking about everything, right from the foundation to the architecture, the music, the laws, the principles, the theology, the geopolitics, everything. He hates it. He thinks it's an existential threat. He thinks it needs to be removed. He thinks he can't stand it. It's noxious. Yeah, imagine him just living in Saudi Arabia, casually just walking around and going, has a bank account there, his car is registered there, he works and lives there, he's married an Arab woman, let's say, maybe, and he's just there and he just hates everything, and he has the power and the privilege to move to UK, but he doesn't. That would be strange. So definitely
exactly.
I mean, he could. You could say so many things, like maybe he was born in America? I don't know.
I think he's born to American parents, probably. I mean, immigrant parents, probably, right, from Iran, right? And as much as we have known about his family, as little as we know, his family is probably more secular than he appears, and he himself was pretty decently secular up until a certain point in 2008 or 9 or something like that. And after that, something ticked off, and then he just went kaboom.
Yeah, I mean, what I've heard is that, well, I've not heard, I've read that his sister was kidnapped and murdered.
Yeah, I mean that's a tragic
Mm.
thing to have happened to anybody. I mean that's should be anybody. Nobody that shouldn't happen to anybody, right?
Mm. So,
Irrespective of how fierce an opponent you have, nobody should suffer through those kind of tragedies, right?
mm. Well, whatever happened in respect to that may have caused his maybe hatred of the laws and of the system, and therefore,
Or the system, right? I think he's yeah. I don't want to comment on that thing probably
mm.
because that's irrelevant to this stream. But anyways, I think we'll just finish it up and I think he's written a note here. I think we dealt with the whole thing here. Just a note. A Muslim skeptic advises all to obey the laws of the land concerning marriage, etc., by pointing out the injustice and irrationality of the law and its inferiority to Islamic law. We are not encouraging or suggesting that anyone should commit illegal acts. I mean, I think this goes back to our point just discussed like few minutes back. If a law is inferior to your law, I mean, you should do everything to get the better law, right? I mean, what are you doing, Haqiqatjou, right? Right? I mean, he thinks. I mean, if the law of the Lord of the world is better, I mean, has to be better in your eyes, right? So what are you doing to bring about that law? I mean, if you're not doing anything, then you are being a hypocrite. Either you should move to a land where that law is being implemented, because if you are just staying quiet and saying no, you should obey the law of the land because that's the treaty, then you're probably at least you should strive to bring about that law that's better, right?
I think
At
that's what
least
he's doing. I don't know. I don't know what. I think he's saying not to violate the law, but advocate for the change of the law. So that's maybe.
yeah, but I'm saying you should be actively at least bring about a change to bring about the better law in your eyes, and in your eyes that the better law is the Islamic law, right? So but he doesn't seem to be doing that, at least not to my knowledge.
What do you mean by actively?
I mean, in a sense that saying that okay, bring Sharia to US. There have been. I mean, we
Has he
are
not done
all
that?
aware that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Has he not been saying stuff like that? Bring Sharia to the US? I don't think.
has
I
he
don't
has he
think.
been? I'm not aware. So if he's been saying that, then probably he's on. I mean, I'm mistaken about that then. But
No, I'm just thinking. I don't know, but
I mean,
I'm just.
there are groups in UK. There are groups in
Yeah.
UK who are really vocal, and you know that very well, Mahadan.
Mhm.
Like Anjam Chaudhary, even probably Muhammad Hijab and all the other guys. They're probably actively saying that. I mean, they're pretty vocal about that. Bring Sharia to UK, right? But that's not something I hear a lot from the guys in the US, right? And
Okay.
in that context, I'm saying pretty much right. And I haven't heard that Haqiqatjou has advocated for that. Probably he has, and I haven't come across such a clip or article.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
okay, all right. So what do we do? I think we should shut down the stream and do the other article next time, right? What is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
other?
yeah. I mean, have we covered everything on this? I think we have maybe.
I think we covered everything on this. I think next article is on what is it on modern versus traditional conceptions of rape, right?
Yeah, I think that's similar. That's a similar point.
I think
And
similar point. Let's see if we really want to
hmm.
if we really want to address that.
Yeah, I think the what we can get from this is that Haqiqatjou is too simple-minded when he characterizes or caricatures the West in this kind of unidimensional, singular way when it's a plurality of different methods, philosophies, thinking styles, states, governments, and organizations, and so on. It's not just this one thing. So when he says about modern secular law, what the heck is he talking about?
Secular law is debated. There's no complete final answer to some of the secular laws. There's lots of scholars differing about different things. So why is he characterizing in such a simplistic fashion? He himself knows his Islam.
I think he's been. I think you mentioned simple-minded. I think he's being deceptive here. I think he knows all these details. I mean, he's not that. What do you call? I don't want to use that word. He's not that simple-minded. Probably. I mean, I did want to use the word dumb, but probably uncalled
It's
for.
probably
Right.
deceptive, but sometimes when you're being disingenuous, you don't realize the obvious, right? Because you're so passionate about the opponent's stupidities that you just characterize things in this sort of way, right? Like
I mean, see, what he has written will pass through 99% of believers, pretty much, right? I mean,
yeah.
they'll be happy to read through that article and say, "Wow, yeah, that's a good argument," right? I mean, nobody's
Anyway,
gonna go and just look deeper into those arguments.
all they
And
gotta do, all they gotta do is look at the laws in the country that they're in. I mean, he says, there'll be financial ramifications for the husband if he doesn't fulfill his obligations, whereas a woman can just go away scot-free from any legal obligations. He just made that up. I mean, first of all, there is no direct law saying the man has to financially take care of the woman.
right, and that's what I'm saying. These arguments would run through 99%
Yeah.
of our Muslim brothers, pretty much,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
let
they
me
will
just
just
clarify. Let me just clarify
yeah.
before somebody says I'm wrong about that. There's usually a post-mortem that occurs at the end of the relationship to figure out who was retrospectively the breadwinner, right? Or what was the financial agreement, etc., etc. It's very case specific.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then you figure things out, and it could be the woman. In many cases, it is the woman. Sometimes when both parties are equally financially responsible, they've done a lot, maybe 70-30 responsibility, 80-20, whatever you want to call it, sometimes 50-50. It'll be split through the middle, right? And in all of those contexts, you can't coerce sex for both sexes. The man can't coerce the woman, and the woman can't coerce the man. In the same sense Islam does, that is, through threats or violence in the second life. Yeah, you could make a case, a persuasive case that I'm going to leave you if you don't have sex. Yeah, but that wouldn't amount to that sort of sex crime that I talked about. That's not illegal coercion. The one that, yeah. So if they just look at the jurisdiction that they're in, there is no such financial obligation of the man, not written into the law, right? You can make a sociological case that in society set up in such a way that the man usually is the primary breadwinner and therefore, etc., 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 right? But even in those circumstances, it is within the power of the man to withdraw from that. The man can escape that by a prenuptial agreement, etc., right? But in those incidents where the man does become the primary breadwinner and the woman is not, let's say, again, he's still not forced to pull out the money right there and then. It's a later on kind of thing. You could say there's a coercion in a very similar sense where Islam provides that coercion, but it's not, because the financial break, some of the things that we already said already, we have to look at what again, this is just for viewers who may have just tuned in or probably listened into again. You have to look at the activity that's being coerced. The activity being coerced, is it just something that human beings do ordinarily, and it's quite normal and quite healthy, and people do it without much distress and anxiety? Or is the activity being coerced something as pernicious as forced sex? Yeah. And when you look at it,
call it gravity of the activity or gravity of the situation. I mean, one is not that grave, the other one is really grave, pretty much, in a
yes,
sense, right?
yeah,
And forcing somebody to have sex versus forcing somebody to have work to feed. And it's not that when somebody goes to work, he has to feed himself as well, right? So it's not as if that person is just going to work to feed others. I mean, that's a responsibility on him or her, probably, even, you can say, right? But when you're saying that a woman is the breadwinner of the house or household, right?
mm.
So I think that
Let me just.
Haqiqatjou has to rely on. Sorry, Martin. Just let me finish. Just 30 seconds. I'll finish my point. Haqiqatjou has to rely on to these parallels to use these crutches, because there's no other way he can independently make these claims stand, on good grounds, pretty much, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And just to clarify for any viewers who may think, but we do think forcing people to work is wrong in the context of slavery. We have to distinguish between that context of slavery from context of these sort of contexts, because slavery is a different form of force, right?
Exactly.
It's total human ownership. It's servitude. It's life, death, limb, body, limb, conscious thoughts. It's total ownership. 1, 2. Even slavery even comes on a spectrum, and there's different variations of slavery. You can partially own someone, etc. What I'm trying to say, that these sort of ownerships on that type of extreme type, they're obviously wrong because of other reasons, because of the totality of it, because of therefore the scope of exploitation, scope of dehumanization, scope of objectification, and the scope of unilateral pursuit of pleasure by the slave owner to the expense of the slave is maximal. It's all-time high. But then you look at the other side of the spectrum, where there's a framework, there's laws, there's lots of protection given, there's regulation, there's transparency. Yeah. Then there's a contract with implied terms, and there's courts where you can go to where you can allow the employee to leave the job voluntarily. That's not considered slavery. In those situations, I would say it's forcing the employee to work by, let's say, a threat of you're going to get fired otherwise, is a different type of thing to slavery, right? And that threat of you're going to get fired.
But most of the courts in the world will see it as a unlawful act on part of the employer, basically, right? I think in today's world, Martin, probably, and since your background is in law, yeah.
What I'm saying is that in the context of where the employer wants to fire the employee because maybe he's incompetent, or maybe he's been late all the time, or because of resources, it won't be legal in most jurisdictions. That won't be illegal, right?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. I misconstrued your point.
Usually,
Probably.
and in certain circumstances, even if he wants to just do it anyway, because he just doesn't want to work with that person anymore, let's say, you can just do that willy-nilly, because within the contract it will say that there's a termination clause, and also the laws would allow that. The laws would allow the employer to have that right to get rid of the employee, provided if they follow the notice procedure, right, and give him adequate notice. My point is that still that sort of pressure to let's say work is still distinguishable from sex because of the activity in question. In the same sense, forcing somebody to eat cake is different from forcing somebody to drink poison. In the same sense, forcing somebody to punch themselves in the face is different and less harmful than forcing somebody to chop their arm off. And forcing somebody to leave their work or something, or forcing somebody to work or whatever it is, or threatening them with dismissal or work or etc., is different from forcing somebody to have sex. You can make it more closer to that by comparing it to a situation where the worker who's being threatened with being fired or something is in a devastating condition in terms of his life. He's in a devastating perilous situation. He won't find work, he can't feed himself, etc. These would be for countries where there's no sort of social safety net, right? These will be countries where there's no such security. There's no government plan for unemployed or something like that.
And you can say that that is a form of bad coercion. And guess what? Labor unions do say that's wrong. And in that circumstance, I might even agree with you that in those circumstances, especially where the employer doesn't have to fire the person, they probably shouldn't. There might be some sort of communistic sort of argument, socialist argument that these sort of workers they should be empowered more so that they can't be fired. But even in that circumstance, it's not the same as rape, right? Forcing somebody to work because you will die, although it's not slavery per se, it has a slavery type of mindset, slavery-like, but it's still in the. If you think of total slavery being on the left and the opposite of total slavery being on the right, human freedom, it's tilted a little bit to the left, but not all the way to the left of total slavery. But it's still bad, coercing somebody to work because of life or death situation. But it's still distinguishable to coercing, especially women, because of female biology, to have sex to survive. Forcing somebody to work in a factory to survive is different, although bad. That's what socialists would argue, and I agree with socialists to that extent. That there is an immorality to human beings, especially the very poor, who have to endeavor to work in particular positions out of life and death situations. And we have to do something about it, perhaps. Governments need to figure out social safety nets to figure it out, so that they alleviate that possibility. But it's still distinguishable to forcing a woman to have sex, because the harm on a woman's psyche is very different to the harm on a man, let's say, or even a woman who has to work in a normal, non-sexual manner, like, let's say, picking berries in a factory or something like that. They're not qualitatively the same harm. Yeah. Is everybody okay? Is everybody there? Is Philo there?
All right.
Philo...
Yeah. No, I was just writing. I just made the link public, and let's see if anybody's listening who wants to join and talk about the subject, or maybe have a different question they want to ask. Maybe we can entertain them for a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so. Right? What do you think?
Yes, that's fine.
All right. Yeah, I think we talked about this topic in great detail. Maybe I think I don't want to use that we ripped apart Daniel's arguments. I think he didn't have any argument, to be quite honest. I mean, it was a very flimsy argument. He just used the crutches of the Western law system, that too not in fully. He doesn't understand what the Western law system is. Not just a composite single law system. There are very many nuances to that, and he's just trying to use that to his advantage, pretty much, just to fuel his agenda, pretty much, in a sense, right? Anyway, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna wait for another minute. If anybody who's listening wants to join and maybe ask a question or have something to say on the topic, pretty much, please do join using the link that's posted in the comment section. And if not, then we probably will close our stream, right?
Yeah, I just find it so striking that he's just never thought about the differences between these things and to that level. I mean, he's meant to have studied philosophy. He should have given. Yeah.
On a second thought, I was thinking, Madan, that when he says that man is compelled to, could that be considered as a veiled threat as well? That you are compelling a man of the household, basically husband, for work to get the bread, bread and butter for the household, right? And that does that count as a threat, that if the woman doesn't comply for sexual requests, that's not going to happen, right? I mean, is that a veiled threat? I mean, there is a much bigger veiled threat already present over there. That's of the afterlife, right? The angels are going to curse you, and you're going to spend your life in the hellfire, pretty much. That's a much bigger threat. But yeah, I think his arguments are flimsy at best. I think just like what we reviewed earlier, the argument from intuition versus Matt Dillahunty. I think next, let's see if we're gonna cover the other
Mm.
article next time.
Just that what you just said there just reminds me that he could say that, well, a lot of things may result in infinite hellfire, right? Or something like that. A lot of things. Not praying your namaz, not following this or that dictate, and
Yeah, not yeah. Many of
are these
those.
all are these all coerced in the sense? And we could just say, yeah, it is, of course. It is like the gun to the head. It is like a gun to your head, because they're not just it's not just, yeah, it's
You're
not
not
just,
free to choose otherwise, basically, right? I mean, it seems like it's your choice, but it's not your choice, basically.
yeah,
There are severe consequences, basically, and so this is exactly as you said. It's gun to your head. I mean, if give me all your money, otherwise, I'll
yeah,
shoot you. Pretty much,
yeah, but
it's that kind of
yeah, that's right.
consequence.
Yeah, that's right. So you could say that all of those were also coerced, or to some extent forced. But we still need to then do a second part of it, is to distinguish between the activities, because not all forms of coercions, even if they have the same consequence, if you don't perform the thing, has the same heinous consequence. Sorry, it have the same. The activity in question has the same heinous consequence. So you could say, you've got a gun to your head and you have to give me all your money. Then somebody else has a gun to your head and you have to perform a sexual act. One is worse than the other, right? So, so the fact that both are bad does not mean there can be others which are wrong or more wrong, right? And what I'm saying is also, whilst it's true that even in Islam there's lots of things that can be considered to be part of something that's happened through force, through a coercion. Like, we don't have a choice but to pay zakat. This is zakat happening. This zakat is happening through a gun to my head. That zakat that you're giving still, especially when you're rich. Imagine putting a gun to the head of a rich person and making him give millions of pounds. This is less onerous and less devastating than putting a gun to the head of a woman and making her have sex. And we need to distinguish between those as well.
Right, right. Okay, we have a comment from the Alta TAC 55, 555. Basically, I think I didn't pronounce that properly, but the comment is Daniel is the king of false equivalences. Pretty much right. I think, yeah. If you haven't listened to the whole stream, I would request you to go through it and maybe go through our review of his debate with Matt Dillahunty as well. Right. I think you'll see his kind of he uses weird arguments pretty much, right? I think. All right. Martin, so I think we waited enough. I think we should close the stream unless somebody is willing to join the stream and talk to us. I don't think there's anybody. So, all right,
Sorry.
we have a guest.
Okay, go for it. All right.
All right, Said Bhai, we'll talk to you for 2 minutes. Walaikum. Walaikum. We'll talk to you for 2 minutes, and then what we're gonna do is, do you have anything to say on this topic?
Yeah. I do have. What do you mean by marital rape? Is there such thing marital rape in? Rape in
So
marriage?
the thing is, let's say I'll explain it to you. Let's say you're married, right? And you are one day you are really sexually hyper excited, basically, right? You go to your house, right, after work, after having worked long enough, but you're sexually excited. Now you want to have sex with your wife, but for some reason, from some biological reasons, not she's not in mood, basically, right?
Mhm.
But you still want to have, because your Allah permits you, pretty much. So you go ahead and do it anyways without her consent.
Yeah.
So is that rape or not?
Rape have a punishment for rape. Rape is not just a word. It's have big consequences of. So if so, what punishment you gonna give to the marital rapist?
What punishment do we want to give it? I mean, you know that in Islamic law there is concept of a rape, zina bil jabr, but that comes in context of zina, not in context of marriage, pretty much, right?
Okay, that's okay.
Right. So zina would occur when you are having sex outside of your marriage, right? Or
Yes,
to someone you are not married to, basically, right? And if you force that someone, then zina bil jabr, or zina bil ikra, as it is called, comes into play, right?
Yeah.
But when you're married, do you think your wife should have a say in terms of uh, you know fulfilling your demands or not?
No, when you declare it's a rape, then you have to be punishment according to the rape.
Well, forget about the punishment. Forget about the punishment.
It's
Forget about the
meaningless.
punishment.
Then that's
Should the all-wise God command something like this or not? That you should not go ahead and do it.
yeah,
Consent is very important.
yeah,
Should he or should he not do it? That's the question.
yeah. He should to do it.
So where does he do
For
it?
consent
In the
with
Quran?
wife.
Where is it in the Quran or in the Sunnah? Where is it?
No. God make a. He made male and female to protect each other. That's what the
That's a very
purpose
broad
of making.
statement. Only a stupid God would give a command like that, a broad command like that, right?
But that's the command
What do you mean by
to
protect?
protect.
By whom?
But by whom? By God.
No. See, a general command that you're saying is very general. What does that even mean by protect? What do you mean, right? I mean,
Protection,
if you
protecting
just
each
take that,
other.
if you just take that command on its face value, the man should never leave his wife, pretty much, right?
No. It's still you have a free will to do whatever
So
you
there is
want.
what you're saying, there is a concept of a harm, right? If something happens, right? Let's say in a marriage, uh, in a marriage, if a man forces himself on his wife, and if there is a physical harm to her, then only she can go to the nearby Qadi and tell her story, pretty much. But what's the punishment? There's no punishment. I mean, there's no. At least I don't remember that there's a punishment is prescribed. Also, if that happens, she has to bring witnesses, right?
No, no.
How
First
many?
of all,
You know that, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's the
Then if
whole
there is a
concept. So
yeah,
you have to understand that this whole concept makes sense only and only if that Allah is a man of a 7th century, pretty much, right?
that's okay, brother. Question is, you saying marital rape? Marital rape means you want to punish those who rape in marital rape in marriage. Do you want to get them to be punished, or you just no problem, you rape it, it's just a marital rape, and that forget about that, or you want to get
I mean,
them
see,
to be punished?
I told you punishment. We are not even talking about it. At least acknowledging that it's a
No.
thing, and
This is the
not
if you do not
allowing it
want to
is
be
the first thing, right? Forget about the
if you do
punishment.
not want to be punished, then there is no such
Forget
thing as
about
marital rape.
Said. You're not getting the point.
Uh,
Punishment
uh,
is a something different thing, right?
Saeed, I don't think you understand, or maybe we've not understood what you're saying. But what the whole point of this stream is that Daniel Haqiqatjou was trying to explain that in a marriage, there is no such thing as a requirement for consent, at least from your wife, because you've already given consent when you got married in the beginning. So you're just 1 minute. Let me just explain what.
Okay, go ahead, brother.
Let me
Sorry,
just
sorry.
explain what Haqiqatjou said. So Haqiqatjou made the argument that, Islamically speaking, the husband has the right, and the woman has the right, to expect sexual relations from each other. In the event that the woman does not want to enter sexual relations, let's say in one night, the husband has the right to demand it from her and even force her or compel her. Now, he uses those words, compel. He writes it in an article, compel her. He says in many different schools of Islam, except that a husband can compel the wife to have sex. The wife can't just disagree, because the wife has to agree to have sex. Why? Because she's already entered the contract. It's a contract, just like you sign a contract with your employer. You can't just tell your boss, hey, look, I don't want to do this job, because you've signed the contract. Similarly, you've signed the contract, the marital contract, and the wife consent. So her consent is there, but in that moment, even though it's not there, it's there broadly because it's in the contract. So the husband can say, you have to engage in this sexual act, or she will be cursed in the afterlife. And there's, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So this is what some people would think this is rape, marital rape, and I think kind of is marital rape. Now, what's your question regarding that? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? What's your point?
I heard a hadith about it. If a wife is traveling on the camel, you can have sex with even she is pregnant. You can have sex with on the camel. If a husband is too hot, he can have a sex with her on the camel. This is a hadith, I guess. So you see,
So do you think that's right?
I'm explaining it. You see,
Yeah.
first of all, the Haqiqatjou is a idiot, a fanatic, a Salafi idiot. Okay. First of all, there is a other hadith. Prophet says, before you sex, you send the what he said message. Before you have sex with your wife, send the message. And what is the message? So he said, kiss her first. So this is talking about intimacy, kissing her, so this is how you. Another thing he said, don't do like an animal. You know what animal don't kiss their female. They just they just jump over it. So Prophet said, don't go like an animal. First send the messages, and messages the kisses, hugging, kissing, those, this is the way. So about this Prophet saying this, and another saying, so even she's on camel, you can go over her. So you say this is hadiths are very contradictory hadiths. So what God say about this? God said He created male and female to protect each other, not just a male protecting wife or wife protecting the husband. No, He created to real reason to they both can help each other, protect each other. This is a literally ayah in the Quran. I can give you many things. Or Allah also we said, I have put love in between them. So just we feel love about the male and female between. He put it that love.
All right. Yeah.
It does not do that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. We heard you. We heard you on that. So you're saying you reject all the hadith, pretty much, right?
No. There is hadiths I accepted.
Because they are
The
contradicting each other, right? They are
hadith.
contradicting each other, right?
Yeah, they are contradictory. So that's why they are man-made hadiths. So you can reject any hadith because man wrote those things, not the
Right.
prophet. Prophet is not the author of hadiths. Some other
Right.
people are author of the hadiths. Like these hadiths, you can have sex on camel, or another saying, no, first you don't do like an animal. You don't go wife with like an animal do. So they are contradiction hadith, and so we have to choose what is good hadiths and reject the bad hadiths. Or the question about the marital rape. Look, the rape is just not a word. If you make a law, if you make a law about the marital rape, so you have to punish equal to the same law. The rapists who rape stranger people. So you have to give the same punishment, not just like that. So problem happen. Yeah, I'm not denying rape does not happen in the marriage. It does
Right,
happen.
right. So my question, to quicken up this stream, and we have to finish this stream. Said by last question. After that, we'll meet again in the next stream, probably sometime other some other time.
Yeah.
Why, if this is such an important topic, an important aspect of a family life, why isn't the punishment to this described in God's law?
Because you see, women can the husband and wife have some quarrel. They have fights. She want to be want to divorce her in future, whatever. So she could accuse him. He raped me, so he have to go to jail. For 10 year, 5 year, and she could a woman will do that. That's why you will not find a law in any world in the world, marital rape. You cannot find in anywhere in the world, because punishment will be there, and innocent husband could go to jail if there are real true rape happen in marriage. But if a wife plan to send him to jail, she could do without accuse him, because there is no evidence. The DNA test is not acceptable, because this DNA test does not show you it was a rape or it wasn't rape. It doesn't save you. So no evidence will be available.
Saeed, what you're saying there is applicable to normal rapes,
What's that?
usually. What you are saying there is applicable to non-marital rapes as well. DNA
So
doesn't. DNA doesn't.
they
Yeah.
can find you can find the evidence for non-marital rape. Very
Not
lot of
always.
physical evidence or
You can have physical
psychological
evidence.
evidence.
You can have physical evidence for marital rape as well. So look, in a on a non-marital situation, if there's no physical bruises, if there's no witnesses, if there's no breakages of the skin, then it's my word versus somebody else's word. It's one person's word versus another person's word. DNA, right?
You
The
mean
same applies to marital rape.
no. In non-marital rape, you have evidence, DNA. You have semen inside, and the other hand, you have a print evidence, and you can talk to people and the history of the people who did it. So you can find many evidence for non-marital rape, but you cannot find any single evidence for the marital rape.
No, you're just picking situations in non-marital rape situations where there is evidence. The vast majority of non-marital rapes, right, is hold on a minute. The vast majority of non-marital rapes in the West are not prosecuted due to the lack of evidence, right? Because there's no eyewitnesses, because there's nobody to talk to, because there was one person, another person behind a closed room. Most rapes don't occur in the West, for example, or even nowadays in the Eastern areas of the world. Most rapes are not happening in a bush where a stranger grabs somebody, takes them to the, or in public, So here's the logical mistake you're making. You're selectively only picking the non-marital rapes that has witnesses and comparing it to marital rapes that has no evidence. Why are you doing that? Are you saying there's a higher tendency for non-marital rapes to have more evidence compared to marital rape?
Yeah, because
Where's the statistics? Where's the statistics?
But the non-marital rape has a DNA evidence. It's inside the woman. Okay, and what punishment you want?
Let me just say,
That's exactly what Mahadan is saying, that it might happen that there is no DNA, right?
no, it's not just that. It's not
I
just
mean,
that.
yeah, I mean there might be DNA, right? I mean you can have the DNA, but
I think I know what Said. Said, you're thinking very too traditionally here. I'll tell you why. Right? You're thinking, since they're two unrelated, maritally unrelated people, the fact of DNA means a rape. No, it doesn't. The fact of DNA means there was sex at very minimum. Where's the rape? Where's the evidence for rape? Rape is to prove rape. You have to prove coercion, force, non-consent. DNA itself doesn't show that.
Yeah. You see, first of all, you can find
I
that.
I think just to clarify, sorry, and I went on a tangent last time, but just to clarify, Saeed is taking a very small sample of cases where those two are extreme. I mean, unrelated to the extreme, basically, not known to each other perfectly. But a lot of the other rape cases that happen between known people, pretty much, right?
Yes,
And that's
exactly.
what Mahadan is talking about, Saeed.
Yeah. It's not just that though. It's not just that, Said. Yeah, he's right. Absolutely. Most rapes happen. Most rapes that occur happen amongst colleagues, people who they're dating, etc., etc. They're not
Yeah,
strangers.
people who are known to each other, pretty much. Yeah,
Statistically, the least likely type of rape to occur is a stranger kidnapping another woman and having sex with her in a forest. Most
yeah,
rapes.
that's the rarest kind of right. Yeah,
Most rapes happen behind closed doors in domestic situations, very similar to marital rape. Usually the rapist is known. That's why I said, where's the statistics? Why are you thinking there's a greater plausibility to evidence these things when it comes to non-marital situations versus marital situations?
Yeah, but there cannot be a punishment for a marital rape because uh, it could destroy innocent person who wife want to take a revenge or want to divorce and take a revenge. A innocent person could go to jail in for 10, 20 years, whatever. You have a rape,
But
rape
Saeed,
sentence.
why would you have a law first of all, why would you I'm going to take the rabbit out the box in a second and explain to you something, but let's keep the rabbit there for a minute. Why wouldn't you, let's say you're in charge of a country, why wouldn't you allow only to prosecute marital rapes where there's evidence, not just based on accusation, because that's already the case right now.
How can you find the evidence for the marital rape? Every footprints will be not acceptable because he's the husband. He's all over his footprints.
Saeed.
I think the way that's what Mahadan has been trying to tell you for past 5-10 minutes, Saeed. Exactly the way you do in all the other cases, except a fringe few where the perpetrator and the victim are totally unknown to each other, right? And those are like very few cases, 1 to 2%, not even probably 1 to 2%, right? The rest of the other perpetrator and the victim know each other.
Yeah, because think about it this way. I say, like a typical rape scenario. Yeah, a man meets woman in a bar. They go back to an apartment. She accuses him of rape the next morning. What evidence are you going to have? You can't have footprints, because footprints will just tell you that they went there. Obviously, there's going to be footprints, because all it tells you that they went to the hotel to have sex.
They will take a psychological, integration. But what I'm trying to say. So they will come. This happened. That's what they. So police also they look at for the girlfriend, boyfriend. They accuse in lot of things have been raped. So they look at that. She's telling that sometimes girlfriend also could say, no, I don't want to have sex. So they look at police. These cases come to police all the time. So they take a psychological test.
We don't have.
Saeed, really sad about this. They all think they're going to look at that.
Yeah. Saeed, so you agree then, even in those circumstances, even in non-marital circumstances, women can falsely accuse, right?
Mhm.
But you don't have a blanket rule that says, since women can falsely accuse the partner or girl, boyfriend, whatever it is, etc., make false accusations, that we should not prosecute non-marital rapes. Why don't you have the same rule for marital rapes?
There is no country in the world marital rape has a punishment. It's not just Islam. Islam accepts this. Women
Okay.
can.
Here's the rabbit. Here's the rabbit box. Here's the rabbit. Yes, almost every country in the West, UK, United States, Germany, Italy, Spain, Russia, yeah. Every single country, marital rape is punishable.
What is the punishment?
What is the punishment?
See, whatever the punishment may be, right? But it is punishable, right? That's
Well, I'll tell you
what
what
we are
punishment
talking
is.
about, right?
I mean, it could be the spanking on the hand. That could be punishment, right?
No, Saeed.
Are you talking about school kids?
Yeah,
No.
Saeed.
At least, yeah.
Let me give you an example. Yeah. The Sexual Offences Act 2003 in the United Kingdom, right? Section 1 is basically a crime, which is rape, right? Where you again, sake of a better word to describe this, penetrate the orifice, the mouth, the anus, or the vagina, right? Where you do this, knowing that where a reasonable person would know that there is no consent and the victim did not consent. Those are the conditions. It does not specify that it has to happen in marital situations or non-marital situations. It's open-ended, right? And on this law, the Sexual Offences Act 2003, plenty of precedents exist of marital rape, right? Cases go to the Crown Court where the husband has been accused of raping the wife. It's happened. So what's the punishment? It depends on the type of rape, right? It's somewhere between 1 year to 20 years.
Is there such thing a nice rape and hardcore rape and softcore rape? Is that something like that?
Huh?
You don't have to go into those details, Said. That's
just tell
irrelevant,
me.
right? I think we're gonna wrap up this conversation.
I just
Madan,
want to know.
No, let him say it.
Yeah.
What is the punishment in UK about the rapists? What is the punishment?
Yeah, that's what I think you have to Said, bhai, sorry to say this, but you have to be really attentive and listening to what is being said, right?
No,
He said 1 to 8 years. 1 to 8 years.
1 to
8.
20. I can't.
20.
I can't remember exactly the punishment. It's somewhere between 1 year to 20 years. It can be depending on the type of rape.
How come rapists have a 1 to 20 years? It's supposed to be 1. Is it less soft rapists and hardcore rapists? Soft rapists get.
I think that's what he said. Said, you're repeating the same
Is
thing.
that what a punishment?
Because I'll tell you why. Because you can have repeat offenders and they will have the highest punishment, perhaps. You can have also offenders who brutally and grotesquely raped or physically abused a victim, right? For a long extended period of time, like you just said. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And you can have situations where the rapist didn't do that. They have to be distinguished. And then you can have situations where the rapist may have made a mistake, right? So in the United Kingdom, rape isn't only a crime when you force yourself intentionally on somebody else. It's also a crime where you made a mistake and you wasn't diligent enough, right? Where she may have protested and you made a mistake thinking that she said yes, but she didn't say yes, right? Well, the law has a different standard here. The law has an objective standard. It's closer to negligence. If you were
I
negligent,
think it's also rape if one of them, you are not inebriated and the other partner is
yes,
inebriated. In that case, it's also considered as rape, right?
both can be
Because
inebriated. Both can be
yeah,
inebriated.
both
Yeah.
can be inebriated.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
So
much.
there's
what
different yes, there's different types of rapes. There's violent rapes, there's forceful rapes, there's rapes that happen through induced consent, there are rapes that last many, many days, there are rapes on several counts, 10 counts of rapes, 20 counts of rapes, 25, meaning there's been multiple attempts at rapes or multiple inflictions of rape. There's rape that happens with torture, and there's rape that happens without torture. There's
Yeah,
rape that
I
happens.
mean that's why so many different. I mean that's
Yeah,
why the range. Basically, that's
yeah.
what I wanted to explain
Sometimes,
to Saeed. Like,
yeah, and sometimes the rape offender has a history of rape, and so that's why you have these classifications, right? Somebody who has a great history of rape, who's inflicted lots of violence, might get the highest punishment. Somebody who's like a first-time offender with low levels of violence may get a lower punishment, and stuff like that. And also, you take into account the mitigating factors, like was the rapist really young? Does the rapist have a disability? Was he suffering from depression? Then you look at the victim. How badly was the victim hurt,
yeah.
etc. All of these factors are then taken into account
Yeah,
to
yeah.
establish the punishment that will be given.
Rape destroy the woman life totally. She will remember all her life. Even her child die, she may forget, but a rape will remain with her for the rest of her life as long she lives. So that's why rape is in Islam very big crime, and that's why it's have a death penalty for rapists.
that's why we are saying that you need to come out of this cult.
No. This Islam is very rational because if
Okay.
she want to take a revenge from her husband, she could accuse him rape, and he
Okay.
could
So let's say
he could lose her life.
I'm saying Kali. Sorry, Saeed bhai. Let's say 20% of the women do that, and law is able to take care of 95% of those cases. Does that mean that remaining 80% of the women shouldn't get justice because that's a possibility that
No.
innocent men might be
In
accused of it,
if
and given still that the law would be able to find the truth?
brother, we have a strong punishment for in Islam. Strong punishment, not like a West 1 year. Then he's a repeated rapist. That's not what in Islam. You have to kill him, that person who rape a man. So that's why you cannot give a husband a death penalty to a husband because his wife does not love but hate him, and she accused him
You don't make
rape.
any sense.
So,
You don't make any
Said,
sense.
you need to go back and read some logic books, basically Logic 101.
mhm.
Yeah, because Saeed, let's say you need a strong deterrent, death penalty, for example, to stop rape, right? You can still
Yeah.
simultaneously have a weaker penalty for the husband. It'll still then discourage. You can seek a balance between. Or let's say you're right that there will be more false accusations against the husband. In order
Yeah.
in order to lower that the impact of that, you can have a
Eh,
less severe.
Yeah, every the wife, she want to get revenge. She just could accuse husband. He raped me, and then she also get
Said bhai, we have
So
already told
this
you
is
that you are parroting the
this.
same thing again
Yeah,
and again. The
you
more number
you
of
know
times
that
you are gonna hold
when
on, hold on. The more number of times you're gonna say that same thing is not gonna make it right. We understand.
no.
You have this is for the fourth time you're saying the same thing.
Look,
It's not
when
gonna
the
make it right.
husband,
You
yeah,
understand that, right?
yes, when husband and wife get a divorce, you know how bitter divorce is. The rest of
Do
life
not make
they
excuses for a wrong. Do not
hate
make
with
excuses
each
for a
other,
wrong.
and she may want to kill him, and he want to kill her. This kind of bitterness they end up. So why not try tell
So
my
Saeed,
husband not rape me?
in your
He could
mind,
even
Saeed, stop, Saeed. In your mind, even in the situation where the wife is bleeding, the wife has been beaten, the wife has forcible signs of sexual entry, we shouldn't prosecute in those circumstances. it
he
right?
should be prosecuted for
Okay, there you
beating
go. That's
her.
the end then. That's the
No,
end.
no, not for rape, for beating her. The
No,
evidence,
no, no,
physical
no, stop,
evidence.
stop.
Then
Saeed,
you
Saeed,
can.
Saeed. Saeed, I just stop it. I just said there's been signs of forcible entry.
What's that?
I've just said there were signs of forcible entry.
Forcible entering.
Yes, into her. The signs of force.
Penetration, science of
Yeah.
science, as
Yeah.
SIGNS, science, not science as in the science, right?
Yeah.
SIGNS,
Okay.
science of the forcible penetration.
Yeah. For husband, we can husband do forcible. But
Yeah.
I'm saying it's not. You cannot consider that as a rape because of this could end up many innocent husband when they're going to
No,
get a divorce.
Saeed. We're not. No. Stop. We're not talking about for an accusation. We're talking about forensic evidence. Why shouldn't, in the case,
Even forensic evidence proof he have forcefully have sex with her.
yeah?
You cannot make a rape case of this.
All right. So
Why?
I think, Said
Are
bhai,
you serious?
you're done for the night.
No,
You're done
Saeed.
for the night.
Saeed. No. He's not done. He's not done. Saeed, are
No.
you
I
serious?
think he doesn't understand the definition of rape. I think what else can you teach him, right? You can't
No,
teach him
no.
much.
Yeah,
Brother,
Saeed.
if
Saeed,
if
listen.
You understand the
Huh?
definition of rape, Said?
brother, if you fall, if you make a marital rape, it could end up many husbands
No,
to divorce
Said,
his wife.
what I'm
They
asking,
all
no,
going to make him go
do
to
not repeat
jail.
what you have already been repeating. Asking you, do you understand what's the definition of rape?
Yeah, force sex.
Okay, what did
You
Mahadan say a minute back?
what?
The example that Mahadan gave, what was the prime most thing happening in that case?
Yeah, force sex.
All
The
right.
husband do.
Okay. All right.
You
Yeah.
see, this is forceful sex
All
is
right. You go back and listen to your this
worldwide.
conversation. All right.
Look. Many times
Okay.
husbands force her wife to do sex is very common. You may think it's not common. It's very common.
Saeed, you don't
You are
make it.
going
Look.
from
Yeah. Saeed, let me talk to him. Saeed, you're not following what I'm saying. I'm saying in a circumstance where there's forensic evidence, in a specific circumstance, I'm not talking about general circumstance. I'm not talking about accusation. I'm not talking about blind accusation that she just said this. Fine, let's say, because it's already dealt with like that. If a woman just says to the police, my husband raped me, and she has no evidence.
Madin, he has moved on. Now he has moved on, and he's saying that it regularly happens.
Yeah.
That's why it's okay. That's
Even
the
you,
argument he's giving. Now that's why
even
I'm saying
you,
that let's
even
close
you.
this conversation
If
right
you
now and
marry,
close the stream.
you're gonna force your wife sometime to have sex.
Madin, there's no point.
Yeah.
Let's shut the stream down. All right,
No,
Said
that's
bhai, thank you very much for
Because
your.
because a young man, he has a hormone very strong, so he cannot resist. He may force her to have sex. Even she said, I'm not feeling good," and he's going to do it anyway.
All right. How
so.
many times
By
have
the
you
way,
done, Said bhai?
do you know that? Do you
How
know
many
that?
times have you done that?
Yeah.
Don't go personally.
No,
No,
Saeed.
you
Do you
said
know?
it happens, right? How many times have you
Yes,
done throughout
it's
your life? 60 years
go
of your life.
go.
That's what you have done.
You go to the girls in the West and ask them how, if their
No.
boyfriend
I'm
force
talking
her
about you.
to
You
have
said it
sex or
happens
not.
commonly, right? You
You
said it happens commonly. How many times
very
have you done
common.
that to your?
I'm sure when you have
No,
a strong
you said
hormones,
you know that, right? It happens, right?
yes, it's commonly to my
Yeah. So how
my
many times have you done that?
scientifically understanding. Yes, it's must have common thing.
I'm asking how many times have you done it? You're not
No,
answering, right? Next time,
don't.
if you don't answer, I'm not gonna take you in the stream from next time
Okay,
on, right?
no problem, brother.
Yeah.
No
You
problem.
either you engage in the conversation or
No,
you don't
I
come.
think you just you know your argument against Ray Metal, I destroy everything. So you don't want to
Why is it
win.
that everybody keeps on banning you from coming on the
You
stream?
cannot win argument by discussing. You just want
No,
to.
you don't engage in the conversation. That's the problem, right?
No,
The questioner asks you question A, and you answer question Z, basically.
no. You asking my
Correct?
personal question. That's not right.
No, that was your claim,
Oh,
right? And that's why I asked you a personal
okay,
question,
okay.
right?
I will answer your question. I never did in my life
Right.
forcing her.
So, okay, great. So that's what I'm saying. That
She's
it happens,
she,
right?
but she just said no means I out. I never force her to do it.
Right. Okay.
But
That's what
it's
I'm
just a
saying. That
personal.
it's why
You
why
asking
why
unnecessary personal
you made a
question.
comment that it's very common, right?
It's very
How do you
common.
know that it's very common?
Yes, it is very common. And you go ask young ladies, they will tell you it's happened or not. Just go ask them.
Saeed, so let me just conclude something here. So clearly, you are not a legal person. You don't have an education in law. You don't have an education in systematic studies or statistics or anything, right?
Mhm.
Because of that, it's very evident that you're just making things up based on medieval forms of thinking about, about these things. Like, oh, it's very common. Or this is not
Exactly.
this is not this is not this is not reliable what you're doing. Oh, it's just very common. It just happens like this, or you can do it.
But
uh, you're not. No, don't 1 minute. You have no experience in the legal system. You've not worked with the police. You've not looked at any data. You've never seen any of this stuff because you're not quoting anything. You're not telling me anything, right? I have a background in law, for example. I actually have a background in law.
you should know more about this.
I do know more about this more than you, right? You didn't
Mhm.
know. You did not even know that marital rape, was illegal throughout the world, most parts of the world. Apart, I told you.
Legal?
Sorry,
You said marital rape is legal?
Illegal.
illegal.
Illegal. Okay.
Yes, and it gets prosecuted. I mean, have you not? Do you not know this?
No, I don't. No, I do not know,
Well,
or I don't think.
well, you may need to brush up on it because it might even be illegal where you are. Is it illegal in Pakistan? I don't know, Philo. I think it is.
No,
Le-
Said is from India, but I don't know if he
Oh,
lives in India or not.
I don't believe, I'm not sure, but I don't believe India has any kind of law like this.
yeah, but Said, you need to educate yourself in this particular topic, right? When you say that something is common, you need to cite statistics. You can just say it's common. I know, my friend told me. Ask some girl on the street. That's not common. You count. You do a study. You look at a study, and you're not doing any of that. And when you say, for example, and Philo's completely right. You need to brush up on your logic here because
Mhm.
there's lots of inconsistencies in your thinking. Because on one point, you are holding marital rape to be more dangerous and liable to false accusations than non-marital rape, and there's no
No,
reason to believe that. Both, look, in the Western world, both are treated similarly because there's no evidence suggesting wives are more liable, wives are more susceptible, wives are more likely, wives are more disposed towards false accusations than anyone else. And there are situations where wives can produce evidence of actual force, and the situations of non-wives can produce examples of actual force. Why not have a equal and fair law where if there's evidence, doesn't matter which situation, married or non-married, you can prosecute it. That's it.
okay,
And if there's no, isn't that a better principle? Look, if there is evidence, then you go to jail. Only in
okay.
that situation. That covers both. And it also covers, no, listen to me. It also covers your situation, which is if there's no evidence, you don't put somebody behind the jail. Wife makes a false accusation, no evidence, husband doesn't go to jail. Yeah,
Listen,
girlfriend makes a false accusation, boyfriend doesn't go to jail. Stranger makes a false accusation, there's no evidence, stranger doesn't go to jail. Better system. Isn't that a better system? Yes, it is.
okay, okay. Let's say wife said uh, somebody, brother Mehdi, could you turn off the mute? Yeah. So wife, she said, look, I'm not in mood, and I have some headache, I'm not in mood, or I also have headache. So her husband anyway did sex with her. Okay, but she do not resist. Okay, uh, is this rape or what?
So in those circumstances, it really depends. It depends. So first of all, can you prove it? Whatever happened, you may not be able to prove
How
it.
to prove it? How to
Okay.
prove that?
Well, I just told you, if you can't prove it, you don't. If you can't prove it, then we should not consider it to be something that's all happened.
But
Right? Listen to me. No. Listen to me. I just said that to you. In the situation where there's evidence, you can produce evidence only in those situations. And I'm saying you don't. Why are you discriminating between marital rapes and non-marital rapes? Why don't you have a universal rule that says where there's evidence can be produced in only in those circumstances? So what evidence might be produced? You might show evidence of, for example, text messages from the husband saying that I like it when you don't do this, you do this or this. You might show evidence of alcohol. You might show evidence of they were fighting many days before that. This is how rapes get proven anyway in non-marital situations as well. Yeah, the people know each other. 90%, more than 90% of rapes are between people who already knew each other. They're not necessarily married. They sometimes live together, right? But how do we go around proving it? Any sort of marshalling of evidence that proves beyond reasonable doubt something happened. It might be forensic, it might be circumstantial, there might be testimonies, there might be there might be signs of force, etc. Indeed, there are circumstances, even outside of marriage, which are hard to prove. The example that you have given, oh, she just didn't resist, can happens all the time in a club. Man meets woman in the club. Man touches the woman's shoulder. Woman doesn't resist, but woman never gave consent. Is that rape? Yes, it is. Can we prove it? Very, very hard. And guess what?
okay, okay,
I am not for taking an accusation, as Philo knows, taking an accusation itself on its own as evidence. If a woman makes an accusation and that's all she has, maybe we shouldn't
She needs
consider
to
that.
prove it, right?
Yeah, she needs to
Right.
prove it. But my point is, these are applicable both to non-marital and marital situations.
yeah. I like to know about the marital rape. What is
I,
marital
I, I think what you're thinking is you're thinking of a utopian society where every accusation is either provable or non-provable. If there's a gray area, then we shouldn't just address that problem at all completely.
Yeah.
No, no,
But
I
even
no,
think I think you're going in the wrong direction pretty
no,
much, right?
no. I
Basically.
want no. Look. Wife said, I'm tired, very tired. Uh, I have no mood for sex. I have no feeling for sexual. I
See,
have
you can
no.
bring any number
No.
of cases, Said
Okay.
bhai.
But
It's not the
I want
problem.
to
I
know,
mean,
brother. Let
you
me.
have already given too many cases. We have to
Yeah,
shut down
yeah.
the stream as well, right? I mean,
No,
I
no.
understand you have another case. We
You,
agree. I think Mahadan made a very valid point, which you should think through. If it can be proven, then it is. If it can't be, then it is not.
yeah,
That's as simple as it gets, right?
yes.
And
In
if
that situation, even if it,
if a
yeah,
false accusation is made, there
yeah,
are laws that punish somehow to the accuser. Probably,
yep,
I mean,
yep,
you can make that kind of a case that pun- to 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 make it as a deterrent for willy-nilly making false accusation. There are laws against that as well,
okay.
right?
Okay. Let's say you give
No,
a
no, don't bring
husband.
another case. We have to
No,
shut
no,
down the
no, no,
stream,
no, no.
right?
I'm not saying that.
We
Let's say
we are about to close
marital
this.
law, apply, enforce marital rape law. Now, for what? Now, your husband get a punishment, whatever punishment would be. Then, then husband and wife, you think they're both gonna to be back together again, or just end of it?
Oh, that's up to them pretty much. I mean, if they think they can still live after that, probably not. Then they won't be. If that's up to them, or the wife will just move on, even after probably the case. She has a right to move on, basically, right? I mean, if
Yeah,
she thinks
probably
that he has done a horrible thing, she'll just move on,
she
irrespective
just
of
yeah,
whether he's punished or not.
yeah.
right?
You see the consequences of doing this kind of stuff. He may
Saeed,
have just
I mean,
forced.
Saeed,
consequences are bad either ways, right?
yeah, Saeed, you don't have unlimited freedom to do whatever you want to your wife, and under Islam, there's going to have to be consequences to many things, right? If
But
if if, if the problem was about false accusations, then a woman can make lots of false accusations against the husband about many things that the husband's not allowed to do. Does the husband have unlimited freedom to do anything he wants to the wife? Can he
no,
just
no, no,
beat the
no,
wife up for no reason?
no. She can. She have right to divorce him anytime she want.
No, you didn't hear what I said. I said, does the husband have unlimited freedom to do whatever he wants to his wife?
No, he cannot beat her.
But how would you go on? How would you go and prove that if he did?
They must have a marks on. He beat him. The
If he
blood.
does without any marks,
What if he
What?
doesn't do? Yeah. What if he doesn't have marks? Yeah.
Oh, then if he continue to do this, she just have to divorce him out of his life. There is no other choice. There is no other solution.
So you there you go. You accept the idea that something is wrong within a marriage, and it can be proven in certain circumstances, right?
Yeah.
and
So
there
what
are
do you mean?
cases when it can't be proven, right? You also
Yeah.
agree to that point. That's exactly the point we are trying to make, right? That any given
Couldn't.
situation from your
Yeah.
Islamic laws perspective, you'll arise in the same situation that we have illustrated in terms of marital rape, right?
You
I
see,
mean, you'll
Saeed,
yes.
you have an inconsistency there. Yeah, you
No, no.
think, you think, look, you think wife beating should be proven in a court if it can be proven. On the other hand, you think rape we shouldn't have any laws for that at all.
No, we should not have any law for marital rape.
You're inconsistent.
No.
Cannot the wife make up?
I mean, think through it, Said bhai.
Like this is
Those are
1 + 1 =
exactly the
2.
same situation. I mean, both are harming the victim in some ways, except in one case it's a sexual harm, in the other case it's physical harm.
You see, this marital rape law could be misused, and innocent people. A lot of husbands are
But
going
same thing could be misused for violence as well, for wife beating as well.
almost
Accusation
all
of a wife beating, right?
divorce cases will end up in the marital rape cases.
But it's not though.
I think
Possible.
Said, you need to go back, listen to this stream again, think through it, and your inconsistencies that you harbor so much. Just think through those, right? And
We've had marital laws in the United Kingdom and United States since the 1970s, and not almost all of the divorce cases resulted in the wife saying that the husband has raped her. Never. That's not the vast majority of divorces at all.
I will look into Google. Yeah.
Bro, you don't look into Google. You have to sit down and study something properly. Right?
I will check out.
I would suggest Said bhai, read some good and this shouldn't be taken as an attack on anything, but go and read some good Logic 101 book, by the way. Yeah.
All right, brother.
On logical consistencies, basically something.
Yeah.
So you can't just say you're looking to Google though. I mean, I'm telling you right now, even before you.
I want to know more about that law, how it's work. I want to know about it.
Yeah, but I'm saying to you the fears that you are having is more to do with bias and prejudice. You have a prejudice. You're just making it up. You've not studied this.
Prejudice, and your logic fails when it comes to your own faith, right? I mean, to the injunctions made in your faith. Anything else, you'll just critically analyze them, right? So, yeah, that's the problem. But anyways, I think we'll shut down the stream. I think we have had a half an hour conversation with you. I thought we'll do only 5-minute conversation, but it's all right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
or
All
I
right.
can say.
Bye
All
bye.
right, but I'll request you to just think through it. Maybe listen to it, listen to our conversation once again, and see
I
why
will
we are
try.
saying what we are saying. Right? I mean,
I will try. Thank you. Bye bye.
okay, and maybe try to listen to the whole conversation as well, probably because you'll see why we ran this stream as well. But it's up to you, your
All
choice,
right.
right?
All
I'm
right.
not
Bye
gonna
bye.
push you. All right, bye bye. Okay, Madin.
Yep. Let's just
So let's just
We don't
finish
need any
this.
final lines. We just need to disappear. That
You
was
will just disappear. Oh, no, I have to plug in the guys. If you really feel like that we are doing something extraordinary, maybe not extraordinary, out of the ordinary, I would say. If you are doing, please consider supporting us on Patreon. The link is just passing underneath on the what do you call the banner, basically, and it's patreon.com/philosapiens, and or you can support us on buy me a coffee as well, again buymeacoffee.com philosapiens, and you can also support us via becoming a member or anything like that, super chats, whatever, all the other means. And if not, at least support us by spreading our channel, our content, sharing our videos and whatnot, and like, subscribe, share. Thank you very much, and thanks, Madin. It was a good
all
stream,
right.
and see you all next time. Bye bye.
See you. Bye. Bye.